Welcome to the Granada Forum. The Granada Forum is an informational resource center that provides an alternative media for America and the world to view their own opinions and to think their own minds. Tonight, on December 7th, 2006, it's Pearl Harbor Day at the Granada Forum. And we're coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. Can everyone hear me? Great. So let me bring in this wonderful guest so that you can see what I know. Dr. Deagle, Dr. William Deagle, is the founder of NutriMedical since 1999. Dr. Deagle is a teacher of medicine, a student, and he proctored at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. Dr. Deagle will be speaking on a variety of subjects, matters of national security and the dangerous situations that are evolving in this country today. So without any further ado, let's give Dr. William Deagle a warm round of applause at the Granada Forum.
Thanks, everyone. I really want to thank everybody that came out tonight. And as I say, everybody that's here is supposed to be here. However, many or few there are, I hope there are many that are going to be watching this on DVD and online, because some of the things I'm going to say tonight hopefully will not only inform but transform you, so that when you're finished the seminar tonight, there'll be things you'll hear tonight that you've never heard in your whole life, even if you've been studying this area for a long time. What I'm going to do is it'll integrate. You always learn what you know that's related to things you previously knew. And some of those are not just physical things, because we're a spirit being. We know things in the intellectual realm, but we also know spirit words and spirit thoughts and realities. And those who realize that the ultimate problems in our society are not a technical one, they're always spiritual. And that transcends religion. Religion is a substitute. So we're going to talk about 4 different talks tonight. And if I can get my my PowerPoint behaving here, we are ready to view the show. Firstly, conspiracy realities of 9/11 to avian flu and beyond. And I'm going to deal with both fact, not conjecture. I try to give you both the forest and a trees view, so you'll see things tonight that you knew and things that you didn't know. Some of it's going to be very shocking. People like myself, people like Eric Shine, who's also on RBN. He has a wonderful show on the weekend, and I don't know if Eric, I don't think Eric made it tonight. Is Eric here? But Eric may be online. He lives here in California. We also have people like Stephen E. Jones, a professor at the University of Utah, that actually presented information proving that thermate was involved with the bombs in WTC, which of course cut up the building. It was not jet aircraft. And I'm going to show you information tonight that will prove that there's a lot more to this. And I'm going to bring you not just at the end of one maze, but I'm going to show you the matrix of all of the mazes, hopefully, tonight. As far as as I say, the rabbit trail will take you. So without ado, let's go on to the next slide. In 1995, I was working at Penrose St. Francis Hospital in Colorado Springs as an occupational doctor. And what they like to do is they had a habit of wanting to hire civilian doctors. I was a civilian, although I'd worked with the military many years in both Canada and the United States. I'm a dual citizen. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. Licensed in 3 provinces. Is it cutting it off? Ooh, how's that doing that? I think maybe the slide projector can be moved just a bit. Well, yeah, I'm not sure if the... Oh, okay. All right. I'll continue, because you'll get all of the gist of this, and you'll be able to get the PowerPoints later. You can get them online. I worked at Penrose St. Francis Hospital, and we had my boss, Major George Swinder, was supposed to actually do the exit exam on the Oklahoma City Forensic Munitions team that came back from the Murrah building when it was exploded in 1995. And he was away, and I was the senior doctor. I'm going to be 55 this February. I've been in practice for almost 30 years. Practiced about everything you can imagine, from emergency department, intensive care, burn units, trauma units, ICUs in the middle of nowhere, 300 miles from everywhere you can imagine. in the middle of mountains to military and nuclear medicine, and also handled the teams working on Operation Top Off and movement of our bioweapons, nuclear weapons, and also with facilities such as U.S. Space Command, Strategic Defense Command, Star Wars, Falcon Air Force Base, etc. And what happened is in this time, one of the 5 gentlemen told me that he wanted me to do further evaluations of him because he had radiation exposure. And of course, I was a chemist before I went into medicine and did marine bacteriology research. I was a charter member of Greenpeace back in the early 70s before I went into medicine. And I said, well, this was an ANFO bomb. It was a ammonium nitrate bomb. That couldn't cause radiation burns. He said, you don't understand. I said, look, unless you tell me the truth, I'm not going to do anything for you. You know, gruff old ER doc. And he said, after he broke down after about 15 minutes, he actually started to almost cry. He was pupils pinpoint, ashen white, scared to death. And this guy's a special op military munitions guy that works around things like, you know, high explosives. So obviously, that's not the kind of person that's a special op guy that gets scared easy. So he told me in great detail over the next 2 hours and 15 minutes how the Oklahoma City Mural buildings were brought down by micro-nukes that were put in there, a U.S. Army Corps engineer, by FBI and ATF agents, and by thermate and other high explosives, including 2 micro-nukes they removed, and a C4 Pineapple, another C4 that were placed on the inside pillars of the building. I filed that away, but 4.5 months later, his commanders at Fort Carson found out, and he got court-martialed. I've never heard from him again. God knows what happened to him. And when they found out, they hauled me into the conference room and tried to threaten me. And I said, you don't threaten me. I said, because they're in the process of trying to fire me. You know, this is what they call a little rendition. I said, you're going to cut me a check for $35,000, letter of reference, and if you come within 500 miles of me or my family with any of your operatives, I said, I will or my buddies will take you out. And I meant it. And so I got my check cut within a half an hour and a letter of reference. And I left there, but I filed it away. I didn't talk to anybody until I brought the information out on Alex Jones' show a few years ago. In my exposures, I have been in underground cities. I have worked for the Iridium Satellite Project. I've been on the doctor for U.S. Space Command, Strategic Defense, the Echelon Project, and the World Identification. And I've taken care of people that have been in the most classified facilities on the planet in Colorado. And Colorado has more classified material underground there and more computing power, quantum computing, than all the rest of the planet put together by a very large order of magnitude. And most of these facilities are in underground cities. And I was in one of them, and it was very impressive. It's Schriever Air Force Base, 18 miles east of Colorado Springs. And the facility, the main facility building is actually underground about a quarter mile. And it was shielded in 2.5 inches of seamless stainless steel, ringed by an anti-missile system and scalar weapons, as well as a full tactical division of Star Wars weaponry. And they had a quantum array, and I physically walked through the quantum array. It's gallium arsenide Cray 5 computers. You may have heard that these other teraflop computers are the most powerful in the world, and they're liars. The most powerful computer was developed by Seymour Cray, who 11 months after his discovery, his systems went section 11, I believe it is, chapter 11, and he died on the I-25 freeway just north of Air Force Academy in one of these weird accidental deaths, where a car crossed the freeway in complete bright, clean, black top and completely T-boned his car and crushed him and killed him instantly. So Seymour Cray had done the impossible. He'd actually, without zero gravity, created a gallium arsenide chip that had to be created at almost minus 200 degrees Kelvin in order to create this chip that allowed quantum computing. To give you an idea, the Cray 4 computer, Cray 5 can do the calculations in teraflops that's equivalent to 100,000 Cray 4s. Gives you an idea just how powerful this is. And I'll show you tonight why quantum computing is part of the matrix they're building and why this is so important. When I walked through the array, they had hundreds and hundreds of Cray computers, all in a giant cube underground, connected by fiber optic high-speed networks. And they weren't just using regular, they were using ultraviolet fiber optics, which is much, much higher speed information transfer. Huge cables the size of your thumb, hundreds and hundreds of them connecting through this array. And if you knew the computing power, they are, and I was told this by my NSA contacts, because I had very high contacts, people that literally on a need-to-know basis the president does not have access to. So a lot of the people don't understand that most of the senior people in our Congress and Senate, if they're watching this video, I'm going to tell them stuff that they don't know, even if they're on the Armed Services Committee. They will not know what I know. Part of the reason is I would exchange information and have a photographic memory with many of the people in different divisions of the military and intelligence, and they would freak out when I would tell them out of their highly compartmentalized area exactly what was going on in the next room or the next building or the next facility underground. The Echelon project is just the tip of the iceberg. They have had a database not only of everybody's dial tone and identification data of every citizen in every westernized nation on the planet, but they have been doing this for well over 26 years, and that database is all ready to stick the chip in you and track you for your global identification. I was actually given a private audience for a gentleman back in 1998 who in 1995 had actually done a presentation to Lockheed Martin and Lucent Technologies, and have a 600 and some page copy of his patent application for the world identification. And he went over the details, and people at Lockheed Martin and Lucent told him that his information was useful, but they'd all gone well beyond that, and he thought of a few good ideas that they'd incorporate. So they said, well, you're going to buy my patent or incorporate? No, we don't need you. So they've been doing this for a long time. The smart highways, the Iridium satellite system, the cell towers, all of these things are integrated into a system that is literally beyond your imagination. As far as you think any of these B movies or technologies, it is orders of magnitude and ages beyond anything you can imagine. And it exists today already. All that is left is the implementation. So in 1999, I met with the people that we were doing our operational tests for Operation Top Off and Dark Winter with Dr. Jay Reddington from the University of Colorado, Department of Infectious Disease at the VA, and the Center for Disease Control Director for the FBI, Director for Bioterrorism. And we were doing simulations. We did bioterrorism simulations at the Performing Arts Center in Denver, and also at the 17th Avenue. And in the Performing Arts Center, we did a simulation where we pretended that it was a release of bubonic plague and tried to simulate if people would gather the correct information at the local hospitals to be able to back calculate out when the release was and who would have been gotten sick, and knowing how long the incubation period, who would survive. Well, we failed miserably on that, and in a test in anthrax sprayed out of a second floor window on 17th Avenue. We also did a simulation in Boulder with a supercomputer there, a National Weather Service supercomputer there, and found that we pretended on the supercomputer we did a simulation of someone coming in from Cairo, Egypt, injected with weaponized smallpox. And our computers predicted that 93 countries and 93 million Americans would be infected in 90 days. That, of course, is a computer simulation. There's lots of parameters that that would confound that reality. But nevertheless, they've been doing all these simulations. Well, on March 1 of 2001, a couple years after this, I met again at a bioterrorism conference with Dr. Reddington, the FBI and CDC directors, and the FBI director leaned across the table at lunch, because we had a private lunch, because I was one of the inner circle, and said to me in no certain terms that there will be a Pearl Harbor event. Interesting, it's Pearl Harbor Day today, December 7th, 2006. And this event will, with a 95% probability, bring about martial law in America and a national ID with an implantable chip. And he said all of those things, and he repeated them 3 times so that it would sink in. And I asked him questions for the next hour and a half, and because he wouldn't tell me straight out exactly what simulations, because we talked about everything from jet aircraft going into buildings to micronukes in cities to bioterrorism release to things in the water to nanoweapons to all kinds of things. And one of the scenarios that was one of the top 3 or 4 was jet aircraft going into World Trade Center towers. So when you hear Condoleezza Rice lying and saying that they never thought of it, they told me that there were actually simulations of jet aircraft planned to go in at that time, later that year, probably in September, into the WTC towers. So when I was driving my children, because I lived in South Denver, in Highlands Ranch, driving them to the charter school 1 mile from Columbine, I was enraged. And the rage isn't even a strong enough word to understand that they actually took those towers down, and I knew that they did it. Because I have advanced training in technology. I was supposed to go into nuclear physics at MIT, and I went into honors biochemistry and completed my PhD research project in 5 months at age 20. I didn't write my thesis because I went into medicine, so I'm not exactly stupid. And when these people did this, I knew that they had not only struck a dagger into the hearts of Americans, but they'd killed people in 82 nations. And this is the sentinel event of our century, not just in the physical realm, but in the spiritual realm, because we're actually approaching a thing called the Nexus, which I'm going to talk in my fourth talk about. When we have whistleblowers like Stephen Jones, with his thermate and his very solid science proving it, and Dr. Ward, who spoke on my radio show a few months ago, was a medical doctor who's retired about 9 years, who did a very recent analysis proving that there were micronukes in the building, cars and other vehicles were melted on one side and not the other. Particleization of 2/3 of the total mass of the World Trade Center towers that were turned to nanoparticles. The only thing that could have done that was nukes. There is no other conclusion. It's not something that's open to discussion or anything else, because even high explosives couldn't have done what was found there. And there were reports, not only by the Pentagon, but by other independent sources, that there were radioisotopes detected at some distance away from the WCC towers, as well as the Pentagon. So whether they had a DU-tipped missile or a small bomb or micronukes, there were radioisotopes involved, as well as the high explosive thermate in the bringing down of those towers. And from my contacts in the NSA, they were operationally ordered by the Jesuits through the Project Omega, which is the final implementation of the project conceived by the Nazis during the Second World War, before the Second World War in the 1930s. Project Omega is a super agency that oversees all intelligence agencies on the planet. Their underground facilities are in Colorado. It was completed under the operational directorship of George Herbert Walker Bush, the senior Bush. And this agency is involved not only with all the deep underground bases, but also our off-world facilities and our off-world fleets of space-based aircraft and other advanced technologies that you can't imagine exist. So the level of evil is beyond imagination. Let's see. Cooperate. Now I just have to get it to change. There we go. Well, the Patriot Act, does anybody know what Patriot means? Well, what it means is providing advanced technologies to receive and intercept operational terrorism. It has nothing to do with patriotism. This Patriot Act, by the way, I had my special op in Delta because I taught the course February 12th, 2002 to the special op in Delta. We're auditioning we're auditing my course for the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. I was a primary professor teaching the course in bioterrorism in St. Louis in February 12, 2002. And I reviewed all of the history of bioterrorism and the operational dangers of both military operations, detecting, public health, and response. And after, for the next 3 or 4 days, I exchanged stories with all these guys, and their eyes lit up, even fellows that had been in lots of countries doing lots of bad things, killing people and breaking things. But I freaked them out, but what I knew, and they taught me a lot of stuff. And they're my best buddies, because they love hearing somebody like me that's out of the box and not afraid. I'm not afraid to die tonight, because if we don't fight this, we're all dead. And we're not just talking about death of our civilization, we're talking about death of our planet. Because of what I'm going to show you tonight, we have roughly a year. And that's a pretty hard estimate. We got about a year, year and a half maybe, to turn this thing around, just like the Titanic heading toward the iceberg. And if we don't stop this, and there's so many events that are converging, it's over. It's not only over for humanity, it's over for our planet. Because we're involved in something much bigger than the New World Order. And that's why when you hear various patriots that talk about one issue or another and they lock onto it alone, I'm going to show you the forest and the trees, so you'll see things tonight that even if you focus on a few issues, you're going to hear things that are going to be very shocking to you tonight. So, the large sections of the Patriot Act I actually received from my special op Delta buddies that I taught and worked with back in Colorado. And I received them 2 years before 9/11. That's interesting, isn't it? Parts of the Patriot Act have been written, and I was told by my friends, were around, sitting around documents in the Pentagon and elsewhere for up to 12 to 15 years before 9/11. So they've been in the works for decades. And again, just repeating that, if you see that statement there, there will be a Pearl Harbor event. And that's serious when we're talking about a Pearl Harbor event. Now, the next big thing you need to be really aware of is the avian flu. And I'm going to tell you a story about this. And you might hear disinformation saying it's not going to be a problem. Don't believe it. This is the Brainiac virus. This virus is the most intelligent, deadly weapon that has ever been released. There is nothing like it in history. And the reason why, and I'll tell you why it is, and this is a very interesting story. I've had Dr. Henry L. Nyman on my program from Recombinomics for the past 2 years until about 4 months ago. Henry was on about every 2 weeks. He's also on the Jeff Rentz show. And I like to do a lot of my own producing. So I spend dozens and hundreds of hours. Sometimes I'm working 20, 22 hours a day trying to collect material and analyze it. Because I know when I look around to see if they're my colleagues, my doctors, I call my quivering white-coated colleagues who are shivering jellyfish, if they will back me up or if they'll try to corroborate, or scientists. Well, Dr. Nyman is a genius. There's no doubt. He has more patents on gene analysis, on viral sequencing and recombination, and his theories are correct. Recombination is how viruses change. They don't change by mutation, contrary to Dr. Fauci, the monster Fauci, who was behind the HIV spread and research, and Dr. Gerberding, who is the head of the Center for Disease Control, who's also involved intimately with the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease and the World Health Organization on the resurrection and the promulgation of this plague. And the money trail goes right back to the Rothschilds and the Jesuits. Okay? Now, I received the documents when I went to speak against fetal tissue transplantation and cyborg research at Human Life International, a private audience with the International Board, March 16th, 1997. And when I spoke to the International Board of their top doctors and scientists at HLI in Zurich, they gave me almost 8 inches of documentation, not only about the avian flu, but about the AIDS virus and about vaccines to create sterile populations in sub-Saharan Africa to get rid of 185 excess sub-Saharan Africans. The AIDS virus was created directly under the control of the World Health Organization and the globalists, and I received those documents. And I personally was recruited in 1974 to take a year off of medical school and do my PhD in virology with the CIA in Uganda to actually work on retroviruses and recombination to actually create the AIDS virus. So I turned it down. But I know firsthand, not secondhand, about this, but I have further corroboration from my documents I got March 16th, 1997. Well, the most disturbing is the avian flu. The avian flu was created with a bioengine using gene fragments of deceased miners in Alaska. They took these fragments and using a bioengine actually recreated the virus from nothing. They succeeded in doing this at the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. We know the names of the scientists involved, but the real story comes when you actually go letter by letter. And I'm a details person, if you can probably understand that. But I'm also a spiritual person. But I'm a real details person. I want to know every dot and comma and which way the comma is twisted. And so I started analyzing the DNA sequences over the last few years and spending many, many hours on the phone off air talking to Dr. Nyman, pulling every article in the world up on avian flu. And what I discovered was very, very disturbing. The lethal genes, if you look at this, the same gene polymorphisms that killed my grandmother's brother and sister in the 1918-1919 pandemic. Her sister died, and then a week later, because the brother had held his sister at graveside before the coffin was closed, he died. So I have a personal vendetta with this, because this virus, by the way, You should know the 1918 flu was created through viral pass-through technologies that were being developed under the vice president at the time of Theodore Roosevelt. So we've actually had bioweapons programs in operation for over a century in America. The virus originated in Fort Lupton, Kansas, beside a military base. And if you line up the DNA letters are a perfect match for the human WSN33 human strain of virus, which is the oldest strain in American databases, and the Iowa pig flu strain from 1930s. The oldest strains, you can line up the DNA letters and show that the 1918 flu is a human-pig hybrid. But what you find is the H5N1, the very first strain analyzed, which is 1971 at the University of Edinburgh, Scotland, that discovered the H, which is the hemagglutinin 5. The H5N1 only had one polybasic amino acid in the cleavage site, which is one basic amino acid. So there's an enzyme inside the cells called an endonuclease, and that enzyme has to come up and actually cleave the H protein for it to enter the cells. But if there's 6 polybasic amino acids, it can enter the cells of any tissue of any mammal: brain, heart, bone marrow, liver, anyone. So I asked Dr. Nyman, I said, how likely is it that from 1971 to now that there will be an increase from 1 polybasic amino acid to 6 when it's never been seen in any other virus in history? It wouldn't occur in 100 billion years. It's not going to happen. It's like winning 1,000 lotteries. It's not going to happen. Not only that, the same gene sequences, which are the lethal polymorphisms in the 1918 flu, are also present, the same letters. It's like winning with the same lottery numbers. Has anybody watched the show Lost? Right. Well, Lost, you keep on seeing these numbers appear over and over again. And that's actually a psychotrauma to you. Okay? Because they like doing what's called hyperspace archetypes. And I'll talk about that later. And those numbers are very significant. The DNA numbers, if those polymorphisms in 1918 are showing up the same DNA letter changes that cause it to be lethal in the H5N1 in Asia, in an avian flu on a different continent 80-some years later. How likely is that, people? It's not going to happen. Not only that, there's a basic amino acid deletion of 4 amino acids in the NS1 gene, which is one of the 8 genes, that makes it completely bypass the immune system of all mammals. So there's no interleukin 4, which is a primary warning system to activate your lymphocytes to fight any virus or bacteria. So you get a massive cytokine storm, and it particularly kills young and healthy with a strong immune system. Very much like the hemorrhagic flu of 1918. This is like Ebola on roids. Okay? The lethality varies between 25 and 100%. Average lethality is 72% compared to 2.5% globally in 1918 during the steamship era. With jet engines, you can fly from here to Tokyo in a day. As a result, calculations done by Dr. Weber at the St. Jude Research Center in America, and Russian scientists and scientists that are affiliated with the CDC and elsewhere have calculated out that if this becomes pandemic human, which only requires 2 gene changes in position 224 and 226, or 228, just 2 changes in the receptor binding domain. It's only 5 amino acids on the H gene. This will kill 2 billion people and infect 3/4 of the population of Earth and kill 2 billion minimum. This will trash society. But more importantly, if someone thinks that they have an antidote, it will force everyone to be quarantined, to be chipped, to be tracked, and everyone will be put into civil detention facilities. And this is a much better solution if you want to create a global matrix than a nuclear war or anything else. This virus has moved progressively to recombine in places like the Middle East to H9N2, where it can swap the genes. And the H9N2, which is endemic to Israel, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and Turkey, and areas of the whole Middle East down to Yemen, has all 5 genes. So a simple recombination in one host, either a bird, a pig, or a human, can create a pandemic strain. We have clusters of people who have these pre-pandemic strains. What Henry has done has proved it can happen spontaneously. So even without a release of, in the words of Alex Jones, the Zycronian 12 plague, this change is going to be devastating. And it will come. We are seeing the evolution of it. If they do not release a laboratory-based strain, it is a matter of months or several years maximum before we have a global pandemic of avian flu that will make literally the number dead will equal all the wars and all the pandemics in human history. That's serious. This is far more devastating to the human population than a nuclear war. And people need to understand, if someone does think they have an antidote to it, they're going to be very selective. Now, I'm going to tell you some things tonight that will probably kill it. I can't say for certain, but probably will kill us. The government has all kinds of things like scalar weapons against viruses, and all kinds of things that they think will help. None of the vaccines they're making are of any use whatsoever, because the virus is genetically distinct into 12 substrains, 6 of them very lethal, between 25 and 100% lethal. Once they become efficient at transferring between humans, and the virus survives long enough in the incubation period, doing any kind of screening at airports or otherwise is useless, because a person can be a carrier for 3 to 5 days before they get sick, and then suddenly develop a cytokine storm and drop dead or just have a heart attack. The virus also can grow in your brain, so you may not even cough once and just drop over dead with virus growing in your brain. So it may not present. You may just literally sit there and then start bleeding from your eyes and all orifices and drop dead instantly. That's what kind of virus this is. It's right out of a B movie. And I'm saying it to people because I've been screaming for several years that we need to have proper public health measures to have HEPA filters in all aircraft and a chain of custody to transfer all materials, to test every aircraft coming in the United States and elsewhere in Canada. We need to have proper evaluations of people coming into this country, whether it's resistant tuberculosis, leprosy, or other infectious diseases. And we need to stop this damn spraying of chemtrails that includes nanoorganisms that are silicon-based life forms that do not originate on this planet, as well as mycobacteria, Pseudomonas florensis, and other organisms that are destroying the health and immune systems of people. And they're doing it on purpose. It's part of their population control. So the reason why I'm speaking about these things is we're at the end of this age. And the masters of chaos have completely gone over the edge. So we only need 2 changes in the genes in order to cause this to happen. And it's literally the killer bees of all viruses. The brainiac, if you want to call it. And I like Alex Jones' term, so I'm going to steal it. He called it the Zirconian 12 plague, because he's a skeptic. He thinks it's nothing. It's all a bunch of hype. It's not. This is not hype. When this thing gets out, it's going to make all the plagues of history look like nothing. And I can't tell you when it'll happen, but it's coming. The next thing is the MARC, which is, I call it the multiply addressable readable cryptographic. That's why I call it MARC, of the driver's ID. And the driver's ID I'm going to show you in one of my other talks, called the Technologies of the Electronic Cage, not age. The National Animal Identification System, if everybody is familiar with, is a new system called the Active Live Chip System, and it actually can track an animal down to 1 cubic meter using satellite-based technology and low Earth orbit satellites, the LEO system, as well as other systems, including it will be integrated to the smart highways, which they want to build off the I-35 Trans-Texas Canamex Highway Corridor to all the other freeways that are going to be eventually all tolled in the North American Zone 3 New World Order 10-zone world. January 1, 2008 to May 2008, full implementation of the national ID will require that you will not buy or sell, have a job, cash a check, cross a state line, or get on a bus, ship, plane, or train in America or in North America, because they're going to dissolve the U.S. Constitution. They're planning on putting the Amero, which they've already called for designs. They had a stock trader last week that already announced people should be positioning themselves to get out of the American dollar and get into the Amero, which is a new American currency that's coming. All of these things are real. They're not imaginary. And they are doing this because they are fast-tracking, and I'll tell you why as they integrate these talks, because I'm going to connect the dots so at the end of this talk you'll understand why pieces that you couldn't explain before will make sense after tonight. And I talk a little fast, so you'll need to get the DVD. January 17th to 23rd, 2007, no Canadians will be able to cross into the United States this coming January without a passport. And all passports for the past number of years have had a passive RFID chip in them, which means that up to 120 centimeters they can scan your passport and tell who you are. But they're planning on switching those eventually to an active passport that can track you down to 1 cubic meter. And you'll have to carry your papers, please, or you'll immediately be detained and quarantined. And they'll require biometric identifiers, laser retinal scans, iris scans, and other things that are required, including a DNA analysis that can be done at a chip developed at the Oak Ridge National Labs and Argonne National Labs in Chicago that can do 100,000 DNA cleavage analyses with a microchip that was developed there in less than 5 minutes with a laptop-based microchip analysis system. So they have this all set up to DNA track and chip every single person on the planet, and it's all coming together right now. What will they pen us with? And when I talk about penning, if you've seen cattle penned or sheep, they're going to try to use a whole lot of issues. And some of these you'll be familiar with, but when I lay it all out, you're going to see just how serious this matter is. So if your friends are asleep, I call it a sheep bowl, they're going to find out the hard way that this is not a joke. And even if they've heard many people talking about these in the past, some great speakers here in the Granada Forum and listening to RBN or GCN, what I'm going to show you tonight is a vast panorama of dark, majestic, evil majesty. National debt and real estate bubble. It's blooming. It's about to pop. And I've heard, and I don't live in California, but I've heard from my friends that in many areas here, the real estate has dropped by 30 or so %. Is that true? Yeah. They're talking, and I talked to some of my friends because I try to research these things carefully. They're actually trying to get rid of the penny, nickel, dime, and quarter, and they want to make a $2 and a $5 and a dollar coin. Have you heard that? That's actually planned as well. They want to get rid of all of these smaller denominations because your dollar will be the new penny. I'm not kidding. Avian flu. I really believe the window, looking at the rate of this virus changing, mutating, and transferring, the window of 2007 to 2008, I think, is a very dangerous period. And isn't that amazingly coincidental that the president, April 1st, being, of course, we have our chief fool and leader in power, April 1st, 2005, he actually passed a executive order saying that everybody must bow to the president and roll up their sleeve and take a shot that may fry your brain cells, give you cancer, or be completely useless and wipe out your immune system if a real pathogen comes by. Regional nuclear conflict with Iran, and all of this is being pushed by Israel, has given us a timetable that in the next 5 months, if we do not attack Iran with nuclear weapons, they will. Our 102nd Air Division excuse me, is now guarding the Dimona reactor site and the Israeli nuclear weapons right now, so it's our armed forces restraining the Israelis from attacking Iran with nuclear missiles today. You haven't heard this on the news, but you heard it tonight, that our 102nd is down there guarding the Israeli nuclear weapons firing facilities so they will not start World War III today. Okay? This is how close we are. We are 1 second to midnight. Not 10 seconds, not 10 hours. We are 1 second to midnight. If they attack Iran, here's the scenario. Russia's given the most advanced anti-aircraft system that they've ever developed, which is very deadly, to Syria and Iran. And most of the Islamic countries follow an ancient dictum that precedes Islam by probably 5,000 to 6,000, perhaps maybe 11,000 or 12,000 years. But it's me and my brother against my cousin, me and my cousin against my enemy. And once you get your stick into that bee's nest, you are going to have a real time. And these people, I happen to have friends in the IDF and advanced services all around the world, and I've seen satellite photos of the launching facilities in central Saudi Arabia, and they have 2 facilities that manned for the last 23 years by the communist Chinese. They have missiles from central Saudi Arabia that can hit all parts from London, England, to Tokyo, to all parts in Russia and Asia and India, from central Saudi Arabia in 2 bases, one 100 miles north of Riyadh, and the Salayo Oasis is one 500 miles north. And they can fire an advanced weapon system with multiple warheads every 30 seconds. All advanced silkworm-based missiles. March the 15th, 1995, I sat across the table with Colonel Lynn Wills, Chief Missile Command Officer, Strategic Defense Command, who's the commander of NORAD radar installation that notifies the president if there's incoming. And he said, over cutting a roast and sharing dinner in Colorado Springs at that time, whose son was the best friend of my son, that the previous week they went to DEFCON 4 and they were about to activate Huey, which is the supercomputer that starts the launch-on command sequence for our submarine-based long-range intercontinental ballistic missiles and our ground-based missile systems, as well as our HARP-based technologies that can knock out all missile systems coming in that are not hardened with the ferromagnetic chips developed at Atmel Corporation in Colorado Springs that are EMP hardened, so they won't be knocked out of the sky. So any jet aircraft, airplanes, or anything flying that doesn't have hardened chips or advanced tube technologies, which is why the Russians still use tubes, they will fall out of the sky. So thousands of aircraft, the moment they declare World War III, will fall out of the sky and all the people will die. That's based on HARP. So if you haven't heard that before, you heard it tonight. That's how close we are to that issue. Real hyperinflation. So that's coming. National health care. Now most people say, we've suffered so long. Canadians have got national health care. The British have got National Health Service. We've got to have national health care. And Hillary Rotten Clinton tried to bring national health care in with the electronic medical record, the EMR. The EMR is an electronic choker chain on your doctor that if they don't do what their Nazi Dr. Mengele commanders tell them, they'll yank their license. They'll yank their chain, they'll prosecute them, and they'll imprison them. So a large and very powerful leg of the New World disorder is your doctor. Because most of the really bad things they want to do to you, including implantation of chips, vaccines that are psychotronic that will rewire your brain, vaccines that will insert DNA to alter your genetics, vaccines that will cause cancer, vaccines that will program so that you will actually be sensitized, I call brain tenderized, to ELF technology that can transfer thoughts and insert them into your mind and your body and control your very physiology using scalar technologies. All of these have been developed, and your doctor will administer them. Just like the big pharma drugs that are administered that are slowly killing our elderly population and turning them into demented fools. Okay? If you think that politics is corrupt, medicine is 1,000 times more corrupt. 1,000, because the victims are either dead, dying, or wish they were. They're going to track all transactions by May of 2008. And even if you have silver or gold coins or you want to barter, it's actually against the Patriot Act. If you read all the Act, which I have, and the various little pieces, because they couldn't put it all in once, the Patriot Act too, they put it in little sections and stuck it on other amendments and other bills, that it is against the law after the full implementation of the National Driver's ID to actually do any transaction without your national identification shown. So if you actually barter, or if you give a gold coin for gasoline or bread, it's a violation of the National Security Act, and you're by definition a terrorist. And by definition, you receive a minimum sentence of a year, which is the requirement to have a rendition to one of 80 civil detention facilities built by Bechdel Corporation in Halliburton for your pleasure and enjoyment for the rest of your days, how short they may be, including that if you have done any violation of state or federal law after that date, or under this law in terms of transactions, you can be executed without any habeas corpus. That's already passed. This is not passed. No civilization in history, not the Assyrians, not the ancient Sumerians, not the Babylonians, not the Atlanteans or Lemurians, not any civilization on this planet has ever actually openly said in advance what they're going to do to destroy their civilian population. But this one has. The hate crimes bill, I've had Reverend Ted Pike on the show. The ADL have been scraped up from the bowels of hell. And the Anti-Defamation League are not looking out for Jewish people. Now, my grandson, if somebody wants to say anything against Jews or against any nationality, I want to say to them, if your political viewpoints or your religion thinks that any group should be destroyed, put down, or whatever, you need to get rid of whatever is the basis of that thought pattern, because that's why our planet is about to die. In fact, the elixir of death for our planet has been religion and religious extremism, not based on spirituality, and it has been on sectarian hate that's been fed by this, by the masters of chaos that have kept us dumbed down and unaware of the identity of what we are and what the nature of reality is, which these scientists have known, many of them, and they're secret organizations for umpteen thousands of years, held in libraries like the Vatican Library, where Nikola Tesla's father obtained most of the advanced information on scalar and sacred geometry that Nikola used for the development of all our advanced technologies, including hydroelectric generation, electric motors, AC power, and everything else. Now, people must understand that the real issue here has got to be what is real and not what is imaginary. And the hate crimes bill makes it so that you are guilty if you, quote, harm someone's feelings, which is subjective. And so you can be prosecuted. It's exactly what they talked about in Minority Report. Pre-crime, thought crime, crime that's based on a sensation or a possible violation of thought. Depleted uranium. And I had Loren Murray on my program. I'm writing a book with Loren and Dr. Asaf Jarakovich called DNA Landmines, Not So, Depleted Uranium. Depleted uranium is not depleted at all. It's only one isotope. And it fits in the periodic table of elements in the exact position of chromium, so it interferes with the primary enzyme that maintains the transmembrane potential of all the cells of your body. Depleted uranium is the greatest plague on all living things on the planet in history. What it is doing is destroying the genetics that will last for over 40 billion, with a B, years. Okay, we're talking about 40 billion years in order for the amount of depleted uranium that George Bush and his junta, Fourth Reich, Nazi maniacs have actually put on not only the people of the Middle East, but the entire planet. And after the 2003 tremendous bombing, the shock and awe, which is actually the name of an ancient Babylonian war goddess, if you want to know, Shakana, who they were actually doing a war sacrifice to. It's a hyperdimensional entity that's real, it's not imaginary. They created a cloud of depleted uranium that hung over North America by July for almost 5.5 weeks. And no one was told that when that rain was coming down, you in California and Texas and all across America, North America, were being rained on by a huge cloud of depleted uranium, with no public health warning and nothing told to you, while the government and NASA knew about it, and they could see it from space from their shuttle. The World Trade Organization. We've had Dr. Rima Lebeau and Major General Bert Stubblebine III on the program regularly. And this is the Nazi food rules. In fact, one of the people who was actually kept in there, Dr. Vermeer, in prison in the 1960s, conceived the food rules, or the Codex Alimentarius. And it was such good rules by a former Nazi that the WTO decided in the mid-90s to adopt it. What a wonderful thing to do. They will reinstitute, now with treaties signed by the United States and Russia last month alone, all the countries in the world are now busily signing bilateral treaties. We signed one with Russia to accept the Code Ex Alimentarius, and the X is on us. 7 of 9 banned pesticides that were banned by 179 countries, that in some of these pesticides are so lethal, if you give them to children under 5, they'll be dead within 4 hours. And if they're people under age 18, they'll be dead in less than 2 weeks, roughly 90 to 95% lethality. These pesticides are so lethal that no rational country, even the big pharma countries, would let them be sprayed on their crops, but they're going to be reintroduced, including genetically modified frankenfoods that have as many as 6 different genes plus, from 6 different phyla and genera of organisms, all the way from slime mold, jellyfish, humans, sharks, and bacteria. They create new organic acids and amino acids that were never before seen on this planet. They create a form of eco-pollution that is so deadly that they create a pollution that literally will never be extinguished. They plan and are building 200 irradiators at transfer points and all through the nation of the United States that are almost completed, so that all foods that cross U.S. borders into the country or out of will receive an equivalent dosage of 100,000 times the dosage that will be lethal to all known living organisms. So all your food, and by the way, when you irradiate steak, what it releases is benzene, so your steak will smell like you just went to the gas station. Okay? And they can leave feces on the fruit and vegetables and other things, because when it crosses state borders, just like UPS now irradiates most of your mail, all of the things that come across the border, packaged or unpackaged, or so-called fresh in the truck, will be irradiated. All the research, by the way, was started by the crazy maniacs in Israel who were doing this research back 30 years ago. They want to release nanotech foods. In fact, they have nanotech dyes, so they can have nanotech fats. An interesting thing about these nanotech dyes and fats is that they don't have the normal respectability that your normal biological processes will stop them from crossing the blood-brain barrier to your heart, your brain, your liver. They cross wherever the hell they damn well want to go. So when you take these things, they will fry whatever is in their pathway, just like a flamethrower. And they know it, and they're going to approve it. So you can have ice cream with less than 1/2 calorie, but you're going to have Alzheimer's next year. Mineral depletion. They are pushing the soil so hard in every civilization in history. If you look at your study of history, every civilization on this planet and on any other planet has always died when their soil dies. And the reason why in ancient Israel, the spiritual laws where the land had to be given a Sabbath rest is for the fixing bacteria to fix the micronutrients and minerals. All the oldest living peoples on the planet drank glacial milk off glaciers where the lichens were able to fix the minerals into the soil, including transuranic minerals like urbidium, europium, and indium. Indium is a chaperone mineral, 47 on the periodic table, that brings all the other minerals into your body. And if you don't have these trace elements, you cannot live. There are certain enzyme pathways and certain genes that never get turned on. They're silenced unless those minerals are present. 95% of American population are magnesium depleted. 97% are selenium depleted, and if you increase the selenium intake in the diet 220 micrograms, half of all cancers would disappear. But most of the forms of selenium given to the population now are toxic chemicals that are not going to be absorbed by your body. They don't tell you that. And Big Pharma and Big Chem and Big Agra are now wanting to have what I call the seeds of famine. So they're going to create literally seeds that the third or fourth crop you will not reproduce. And they're going to try to ban it in all these countries like India. When I talked to Rima, she was down there at the end of the summer with major stubble buying, and they convinced the Prime Minister of India that the World Trade Organization would mean the death of their normal farmers because it's a heritage. They had heritage seeds and crops. If these heritage crops die, the food crops of our world will die. And the predictions by their scientific panel is that the acceptance of the World Trade Organization will result in 5 years in the death by starvation and malnutrition of 1 billion, and the death by disease, such as diabetes, cancer, and heart disease, of 2 billion in 5 years. Hey, between the avian flu and the WTO, you got 7 billion gone. Yeah. They want to reduce the population, if you go to the Georgia Guidestones, down to 500 million. This is not a joke. I spoke to Dr. Isley, who owns the vitamin cottages and so on in Colorado, and is well known. He's a PhD physicist and was a founder of the Federation of Earth organization there. And many organizations and non-government organizations have signed the Federation of Earth documents. Some of their ideas are good. They want to reestablish the phytoplankton in the oceans, but some of them are pretty wacky. The biggest problem is that they don't connect all the dots. And if you don't connect all the dots, it's like putting together a puzzle and say, oh my gosh, the other part of the puzzle has fallen off, but it fell in the fire and now it's on fire. So you have to connect all the dots. This next one is vaccines, and it's take a shot or get shot. In fact, I confronted the director of FEMA at the conference in Denver, and the director of FEMA, this was December 12th of 2001, and he was saying, you know, all their plans to protect the population, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In actual fact, I confronted them that their plan was, because I'd seen their operational manual, which wasn't public, that if there's a release of a bioweapon, a radiological weapon, or a chemical weapon, it's to create a perimeter over the central zone and to lock down, which means if anyone tries to escape, there is to shoot and put you in an isolation body bag, kill you, and to quarantine all the people so there's maximum cross-contamination of radioisotopes, chemical or biological weapons in facilities to make sure you all die. And I confronted them on that because that is actually their operational plan. So if you think FEMA is there to help you, they're there to help you into your coffin or your mass grave. That's what they're there to help you. Let me take your hand. No, they want to help you into your grave. I'm not kidding you, and I confronted them. That's in their manual. I said, now what sense does it make to take the population, say, of South Denver and put them into Centennial Airport, 500 men shoved into a place with little tiny curtains and cots, with the wind blowing from one side to the other if they've got a highly infectious disease or the radioactive isotopes, such as cobalt. Because if you got cobalt dust, one tiny fleck of it, you're dead. You're dead. So if you cross-contaminate someone else because they walked over the Rocky Mountains from California, and your clothes have one tiny fleck of cobalt, anybody that touches you is dead. Okay? So what they're going to do is make sure there's maximum cross-contamination. Now these vaccines also not only contain ethyl mercury salicylate, and the dental profession should be afraid. They are obscene. I did the original research with Dr. Murray Vimy in 1980 to 1983, assisted him when he was doing some projects where we were doing mercury sniff meters at the University of Calgary and microvoltmeters across the teeth amalgams, and we could prove that your teeth are a battery. And if you put a third metal in, like gold, like a crown, and it doesn't matter where it's in your mouth or if it's anywhere else in your body, if you have metals of dissimilar oxidative potential, you create a battery. And after you chew, you get a piezoelectric compression of those in the amalgams in your teeth, and you get a massive increase in voltage. That's why people often, depending on the shape of their amalgams, they might start picking up FM radio. And it's real. They're not just hearing voices in their head, they're hearing a disc jockey in their head. So, mercury is toxic. And my dentist, who's a very good surgeon and teaches at the university last year, said, I don't think mercury is really bad. I said, wrong choice to say that today, because I'm Deagle. Deagle doesn't take bullshit. So for the next 45 minutes, I gave him a lecture on how mercury locks onto the GTP receptor of neurotubulin and literally truncates your dendrites. So if you give this to a child, it cuts all their dendrites off forthwith. And if you take the vaccine calculator, which I have posted on NutriMedical, which is very accurate, right from their product information sheets, what you'll find is that the total mercury dosage by 18 to 36 times exceeds the total maximum toxic level for children with the current vaccine schedules of the World Health Organization, who are not exactly human-friendly. Then the new vaccines also contain cells from aborted fetuses, including fetal retinal cells and insect larvae. And by the way, these DNA are not stable, which means it intercalates into your DNA and can jump because they have what's called jumping genes that actually can jump around and activate oncogenes and other activities in your cells that have very strange effects. Just like Dr. Moreau's Island. Oncogenic viruses like SV40 have been in the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine for over 40 years, and they have not relented. They still give their MMR. Better get your shot. Happy dementia. Mycoplasma. They put Mycoplasma fermentans incognita in on purpose in our prisoners and in our U.S. Armed Forces just to experiment. And the experiment started with the Nazi doctors who were incorporated into our facilities, such as the medical facilities down near Coronado Naval Base and other medical schools all across America and Canada. All the advanced biological weapons, including mycoplasma research, originated in Nazi Germany. We just grafted the Third Reich because we're the fourth. Spirochetes, Mycoplasma fermentans, and of course we have Dr. Garth Nicholson from the Institute of Molecular Medicine here in California. He wrote a book called Operation Daylily. He changed all the names in other places and so on, so he wouldn't spend the rest of his life either in prison or in court by our lawyers who are phonetically close to liars. Chemtrails. And chemtrails, by the way, barium salts are in chemtrails. They are 10,000 times more toxic to your nervous system than lead. They contain mycobacteria, viruses, Pseudomonas florensis, bacteria, human plasma. Wonder what human plasma is doing in chemtrails. And this is not by conjecture. I did a lot of research before I'd ever say this, but these chemtrails are nasty. And there's three reasons for chemtrails. The first is and I talked to my NSA buddies at Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force Base, and Buckley, where I was actually their doctor taking care of the pilots flying and spraying the chemtrails. So I know it's real. If anybody says it's not real, they're full of it. Okay? Because I'm a whistleblower. On the inside, it's not open for discussion. And my NSA buddies told me, 95% of them told me, they were up there trying to spray to reflect the sun out to stop global warming. So most of them are dumb enough to believe that garbage. Okay? And also in the chemtrails, and there's a link directly that Jeff Rentz has found out, and I'm going to have Dr. Staninger and Dr. Carjou on in about a week on my radio show. And I've done some investigations, and there's very solid evidence now that Morgellons is caused by a silicon-based nanomachine life form that does not originate on planet Earth. Is that not interesting? This is a silicon-based life form that is intelligent like bees or ants, and it fights back. Conversion of the atmosphere into a plasma for weather modification, geotectonic warfare, scalar mind control technologies, the woodpecker, which has been discovered back in the 70s, HARP, the Tetris system in the United Kingdom, Gwen towers in the United States, and the Iridium satellite system connected to the cell towers and the smart highways is all based on not only sending out a signal to track you, but Nokia, which is one of the leading cell companies, has figured out a new way to cut down the need for increasing the amount of signal by 3 to 5 times as many cell phones in the same signal area by beaming the signal directly to you. But they can also, besides the cell signal, they can actually have a biocoded signal to your DNA to affect your physiology and insert thoughts into your mind. And they have this technology today. And Nokia is directly involved. If you go to these cell phone companies, either Bell Laboratories or you go over to Nokia over there in Helsinki, what you'll find is that these are highly classified, and you have NSA agents, and above government technology, top secret and above top secret, all over the place. This is not a place for making cell phones. It is a place for dialing up your cortex. Force 5 hurricanes and cyclones. Of course, a hurricane is in the northern hemisphere, a cyclone is in the far east and south. And why are they happening? Well, they're happening for several reasons, which is why we're going to talk about some of the other talks later if we have time. And I'm sure I'm a little long-winded, but I hope everybody can last tonight. First off, what's happening is I researched this very extensively. The Planet X phenomenon, Planet 10, is not an imagination. This is real. We're also about to, our solar system is rotating around the galaxy, and we're transitioning across what's called the precession of the equinoxes across the galactic plane, where we're entering what's called a proton energy field, which they know about. They're very aware of this. This proton energy field is not only a rent in our area, but it's also a rent in hyperdimensional space. So it's an area where transdimensional entities can enter through what's called a stargate. And they're very aware of this. That's why they have all these stargate projects. And that's why there's a lot of strange and crazy things happening. The reason for the global warming is caused by two phenomena. One, the polar ice caps are melting on Mars. There's superstorms on Jupiter and on Io and these other moons where there's changes in the geotectonics, etc. It's caused by the sun because the solar system is a Tesla wheel, if you know what a Tesla wheel, and there's discharges occurring because there's a hypergravitational object approaching from us at great distances that are probably 50 diameters of the solar system at a very, very rapid pace. In fact, the calculations done by scientists like Dr. McKenney have estimated that as it approaches past the former planet Pluto, which is now replaced by the planet Eros, which means the goddess of chaos. This is the new planet, by the way. Does anybody know that the new planet's name is Eros, the goddess of chaos? Well, in fact, if you look at the heating, we have 90% of the glaciers are not melting, 10% are staying the same, 80% are actually increasing, 10% are melting, and the polar ice shelf is melting in areas near the Deagle chain, which is a huge volcanic chain under the water that's 3.5 to 5 miles down across the Arctic Ocean, and another chain across the Tierra del Fuego area and across just one area of the shelf. And they want to point to these areas because the volcanism is increasing at the bottom of the oceans where the water is 500 to 700 degrees. These hyper compressed waters and incredible atmospheric pressures are heating the oceans, and the oceans are turning over, which is why we have El Nino and La Nina right now, and why the weather is acting so weird on the west coast and the east coast, and why you guys are getting clobbered on the west coast. We were clobbered last year on the east. And when they have fools like the Al Gore, who says the inconvenient truth, what it really is, it's a very convenient lie, because their plan is to reduce and control the remaining population on the planet without warning us of the devastation to coastal areas, the release of super calderas like the one in Yellowstone National Park, and the explosion of massive volcanic activity that could break off the Hawaiian volcanic shelf, which could create a tsunami half a mile high hitting the west coast of the United States at 740 miles per hour and going all the way to the west slope of the Rockies. And this has been already worked out in laboratories like the laboratories in Zurich, Switzerland, where the massive earthquakes that might occur off the Canary Islands may actually create a wave as high as 300 meters or 90 stories high that would hit the east coast of the United States and North and South America, going in 100 to 300 miles and traveling at 540 miles an hour. But you guys on the west coast have got something much bigger in store for you if the Hawaiian volcanic activity occurs, which is occurring in the Ring of Fire. Populations that are very familiar with, like the Japanese population, and know about volcanism and know about cataclysm, it's not just their scientists telling them, it's their spirits telling them that something is coming, because we really have everything lined up precisely like before the Great War between Atlantis and Lemuria, with the exact same population types, the exact same technologies, and the exact same geopolitics. Isn't that a coincidence that we're in the same position on the precision of the equinoxes and the cycles? There was just a tornado today in London. Did anybody hear about that? December 7th? There was a tornado in London, and it caused quite a bit of damage. London, England. Have you ever heard of tornadoes in London? No. Loss of the escalator effect. There's been a 30 to 35% decrease in the Gulf Stream, bringing warm waters from the Gulf of Mexico to North Europe. They're not heading toward global warming. They're heading to an ice age. An ice age is not caused by cooling. It's caused by increased rainfall. Has anybody noticed that in some areas of the world the rainfall has really gone up a lot, and other areas are desertifying? That rainfall in the northern hemispheres will cause snows that could pack up to 100 feet of snow per year. They calculated out that in the last ice age, there was equivalent of 100 feet of snow packed down per year in order to create the thickness of 2,000 to 4,000 feet of solid ice before the last ice age ended. And these ice ages, by the way, come in very quickly, in as little as 3 to 5 years. It doesn't mean that it's the end of civilization, but it means lots of places are not very habitable because you're under a few thousand feet of ice. Most of North Europe would become under a massive sheet of ice. Most of Canada would be covered under a massive sheet of ice. There may well be also a pole shift, which may occur with this because it has occurred before. In fact, they've calculated out, this may not be common knowledge, but the North Pole used to exist 500,000 years ago near North Bay, Ontario. So Santa's place actually is in North Bay, Ontario. He just had his real estate moved. People need to know that the actual crust of the Earth moves on the magma shield, and there's actually a rotation of the north-south poles, and you can actually see it from rock deposits. This is science, showing the changes in geomagnetic lines in rock deposits and volcanic ash and so on, showing that the cataclysms are not an anomaly, but is the basic structure not only of our planet, but of most planetary systems in our solar system, where 76% of all of the planets in our known galaxy are binary, and 16% are trinary, meaning they have at least 3 sun-like objects, either a dwarf star or smaller stars. In fact, the planet Jupiter is not a planet, but it's a star, because Jupiter gives off more heat and light and radiation than it absorbs. Therefore, by definition, it's a star. And any hyperdimensional object, a high-density object that could be ignited into a star or was a star, is by definition a dwarf star. This planet X is not a planet by any means. It's a hyper-dense object that by definition is a probable aborted or dwarf star. So we probably have a trinary star system with a press and reset button to civilization. And we're about to have the button pressed on us. Tsunamis and Yellowstone super caldera are coming. Now, I can't tell you when, but the thing that will trigger it off is the approach of a hyperdense object. Now, why are they building underground bases at an enormous pace? There's now somewhere almost around 1,500. And if somebody had told me this years ago, I'd say, you know, you're a nut. Don't tell me about that crap. But when you've been underground on one of them, nobody's going to argue with me anymore. I don't care. They could punch me. They could slit my throat. I don't care. I've been there. It exists. I took care of John Fiala, who is best friends with Phil Schneider. How many people know Phil Schneider? Well, they were using tunneling machines back in the mid-90s that could tunnel a rock face at 7 miles per day, that could cut through a rock face with high-energy impact lasers that would blow the nano-sized particles of rock so there was no debris left, forming an obsidian-like core and laying an inner core for unidirectional maglev trains that travel at Mach 2 to 2.8 underground between these very, very powerful and organized cities. There's 132 under the United States, an average of 5.36 to 7.24 cubic miles in size, an average of 1.5 to 4.5 miles underground. Built by and large, most of them in areas away from geotectonic areas, but there's going to be lots of new geotectonic faults established when you have force 11, 12, and 13 and 14 earthquakes that hit the earth. The earth, as it says in the Bible, will shake like a hut, and every wall will fall, and every mountain will be moved, and every island from its place. And that's not just a idle saying. Why are they rushing to do this? Because they know a catastrophe is coming. And where's this money coming from? It's not coming from our regular blackout budgets. It's coming from the illegal sale of drugs. In the United States, there's at least, by conservative estimates, $250 billion to $500 billion of illegal drugs just sold in the United States that goes directly into underground budgets, and 90 to 95% goes for dumb one. And I'm contacted all the time by all kinds of people. Most of them are cowardly because they won't come live on my show, but I will tell them about them, although I won't say their name. One was a Canadian who actually was working on the Aurora spacecraft, our fleet. We have more than one fleet of Aurora-based spacecraft that fly at sublight speeds to our base on the moon and our colony on Mars. This technology is far beyond that, and actually this is the old stuff. They call the Model Ts. They have stuff now that goes above light. They have all kinds of advanced technology that they won't tell you about that could heal and stop pretty well all diseases they don't want you to know. Okay? And the worst of it all is Project Omega. Project Omega is an underground facility. Its headquarters are under Colorado, finished by George Bush Sr. This oversees all secret agencies, whether it's the GRU, the FSB, the Brazilian Secret Police, the Mossad, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the FBI, MI6. All of them are totally integrated into this octopus called Project Omega. It is run by both human and non-human entities. The World Trade Organization, Codex Alimentarius, Population Control, DU, suppressed energy technologies, hoarded anti-aging disease cures, financial henchmen linked to global IMF population control, Morgellons, chronic wasting disease is another nanotechnology disease specifically designed to destroy all of the ability for people to hunt, to survive if there ever was a cataclysm. They're now found at least 10 states and in 2 provinces. And we have Scott Kowalski on the program, and they've told him, of course, the Michigan Department of Wildlife and their biologists said, you can't be dying, but his fingers are dissolving. Literally, his fingers are dissolving. He's down to stubs. His arms are dissolving. He's been told he's 90 to 120 days left. So if anybody's listening to this program tonight, have some compassion and try to help this man, because his disease is coming to you. And they want to make certain that you can't possibly go hunting or eat any meat because they're ready to control all food. In fact, I was told by my secret sources that they plan on having, by the next 12 to 14 years, all food will be grown in large buildings. This is a literal statement I was told, 90 stories high, half a mile wide, and 2 miles long, that will grow simulated meat genetically engineered on rollers, fruit grown on beds and hydroponics from cell culture and using advanced cell-based stem cell technologies. And there will be no more trees or animals. It will all be grown in these vats. That's what they want. All be genetically modified, so they'll have genetically modified people. And then to add insult to industry, we have the I-35 Canamex Transportation Corridor by the King of Spain, who, by the way, has the title of King of Jerusalem. Isn't that interesting? 10 miles right away with the new eminent domain, seizure of property and abusive administrative controls. Instead of the courts, the administrative courts, having rights to take away property, which they don't have any constitutional rights, they're going to seize property. But they also have a 200-foot right-of-way below ground to lay toxic waste pipelines, water lines, high-tension plasma energy lines, anything they want. And they're going to link all the freeways in America, called a smart highway system, to these systems, so you will be not able to go off any highway anywhere, and all the other areas will be rewilded. They're going to literally set up walls and barriers to have the buffalo roam in the plains. Large areas of California, the Midwest, and so on will have wild animals, and if you go out there, you're going to have wild wolves, buffalo, and wild animals out there like you wouldn't believe. That's their plan. Plus, they're genetically engineering to try to resurrect dinosaurs, just like Jurassic Park, and they can do it. If you think they can't do it, you're living in a dream world. Full integration with all the highway systems. They want to have a tag for tracking, satellite control. It's tied in with the OnStar. The OnStar satellite system in your car has more power than the Apollo space missions that went to the moon. That system can not only control your ABS and your brakes, but it can control the braking systems on the left or right tire. It can actually make your car go over a cliff or control it at their command by satellite control. So you should be aware, if an OnStar system and an advanced ABS system in your car, they are at any time in total control of your vehicle. The Free Trade of the Americas, of course, is their little plan, and it's published actually in the journal Foreign Affairs, September 1971, for Fortress North America, where you get a North American passport. And of course, they want to have new cannon fodder, another 100 million new poor, black, Hispanic, Mexican, or Central and South American, for cannon fodder for their new wars. I call them white, Anglo-Saxon, rich scum. And I happen to be white, but I'm not rich scum. But there are. And in fact, what happens when you see Bohemian Grove and these other people, this is very evil. And they want to have the American Amero on par with the euro and, of course, the regional European Asian currency. And their plan is to have all these integrated by 2010 so that all other currencies will be pegged to them, including the Russian ruble, the yen, the yen. All currencies on earth will be pegged to one of these regional currencies. And they're tied into an electronic currency system that will be the literal mark of the beast. And I'll show you what it is. Professor Stephen Jones, he received rendition where he's on administrative leave. I've been hassled by the Board of Medical Examiners trying to drum up charges out of nothing. Eric Schein, a U.S. Merchant Marine, he has been hassled as a whistleblower with millions of dollars missing from the U.S. Treasury and a sellout of our merchant operations and national security. Freeport, Bahamas, these other facilities has containers coming in that could house large-sized nuclear weapons and other radioisotopes or biological weapons. Will now be seen over by Hutchinson Lampoa, a branch of the People's Republican Army of China. And what they do is what's called administrative rendition. They have you licensed. And again, the license goes right back to the mercantilism of the royals. And you have to understand that we are still in the same associations and control under the Queen. The Crown is actually not the Queen. The Crown is a mile square area of Great Britain, London, the city of London, that is the most powerful single financial capital in the world, and it is directly under the control of the Jesuits. The Crown, in fact, and all of the legal associations for all the countries on the earth belong to the Bar, which is the British Authorized Registry, which is slightly higher than a gentleman and slightly lower than a lord. So when you belong to the Bar and you're a lawyer, which are most of the politicians in all of our countries in the world, you happen to belong to the power of the Crown, which is directly under the control of the Jesuit general. That's just a fact. If you want to check all these facts, so get the book Vatican Assassins. It's been a little bit late in coming, but there's an extra few hundred pages since we started announcing it was coming back in October with Eric John Phelps, and I can tell you I've checked through his documentation and there's nothing wrong with it. It is all correct. But with the hate crime bills, you better get your copy soon, because all this stuff is going to fade into history, just like those movies years ago where everybody had to become a page of a book because they want to get rid of all the books. The book burning is coming. The hate crime is coming. They don't want truth. Truth is a detergent to the New World Order. What kind of recommendations? Well, there's a few basic ones. I tell people to get a first line of defense kit, which I put together last year. Super silver, which is not a regular colloidal silver. It's a nano silver oxygen wrap that kills all known pathogens. Your Second Amendment supplies, guns, crossbows, slingshots, air compressor guns. And we're going to set up some little private networks. I know how to make non-lethal type of devices, let's put it that way, very easily. So people need to have these little homemade deals around because there's going to be rough times coming. They need to have things like whole foods that contain antioxidants and nutrients like the Uri International Foods. They should have freeze-dried food like eFoods Direct or Freeze Dry Guy, which is based here in California. And they need to have these because we have only 3 to 5 days of food nationally. We used to have a year and a half. If there is a national code red, and I've been told this by FEMA and elsewhere, they will close all of the freeways, And they will shut down on purpose in Canada and the United States the grid. The grid is going to be shut down. So if you don't have a solar generator or something else to generate power, you're not going to have any. And all the gas stations are run on electricity, so they will not pump, so you can't go further than a tank of gas anywhere you're going. They're going to do it so you're going to be quarantined in your house. So if you don't have enough food or water, it's going to be pandemonium. And that can happen very quickly. I talked to one of my friends. My brother-in-law was the executive assistant to the premier in our province of Nova Scotia, where I live right now, Nova Scotia. And his best friend, Barry, is a senior planner for the Canadian government. And they've calculated out that in North America, in the U.S. and Canada, if there was a shutdown of all services because of Code Red, more than half the population of the United States and Canada would be dead in 30 days without war, famine, a geological disorder, or war, or a nuclear war. Within 30 days, with no highways and no services, more than half the population would be dead. So you better be aware that this is coming. They're planning for it. You need to have heritage seeds, Canada-dried foods. You want to have what I call local citizen groups. I personally am not a big fan of militia. I think it's better to have neighborhood groups. I think people need to start networking. And I think that how large the group needs to get is based on your ability to how many people you need to have a watch, whether it's in your group or neighborhood area. And your worst enemy is your unprepared neighbors. So if you're not handing out these CDs and telling people about what's going to happen, they may spit in your face, but when things start to happen, they're going to beg you to tell them more. Remember, you're a what I call mustard seed carpenter. You have a carpenter's wedge, a bag of mustard seeds, and a hammer. And in the little cracks of their stupid skull, you're going to drive in these mustard seeds of common sense. And when the water of disaster comes upon their head, the seeds are going to grow whether they want them or not, and their roots are going to start splitting their very, very thick skull. And they are going to ask you and beg you and crawl on their knees to please tell them how they're going to survive. Because that's what we're going to be facing. Now I'm going to tell you something more that's very, very disturbing. The most common story that I receive from my contacts in the NSA and these above government agencies with the bioterrorism and nuclear terrorism is that there are pre-placed nukes in U.S. cities in at least 22 cities. They are maintained under Project Omega by Israeli Mossad and Russian GRU nuclear agents. And one of them actually told me that they handle them like bananas, that they literally service these like bananas. I said, what do you mean bananas? He said, well, bananas go bad. They get brown spots and you got to throw them out, even if they look like they might be good to eat. And he said they're very critical. So you got to test the Crytron switches monthly, which are fast switches that do picosecond electrical pulses, and they have to be very accurate. And you have to have very, very critical levels of radioisotopes, especially when you have small nukes. You have to have special types of materials. You need to have special things like lithium and some of these other special elements in very high grade, and if they degrade even slightly, you won't have enough slowing of the protons and neutrons to create a proper nuclear explosion when you have an explosive that's the size of a large softball. So, they're all about. And I know what 22 cities they are. And Los Angeles is one of them. You need to have dressings, sutures, emergency first aid kits, blankets, portable stretchers, limb splints, vitamins, herbal medicines, regular medicines for 6 months. How many people here have 6 months? Their drug plans won't allow them. Potassium iodate, insulin, decontamination kits for radiation. Is the government telling you what to do? And they tell you, get duct tape and plastic. Radiation detection. You need a rad detect, which is a directional detector for all 4 types of radiation, or a nuclear, which is not quite as good. We have 2 sources for the rad detect. We have one from Earth Pulse with Dr. Nick Begich, and we have another one from the nuke pills. The nuke pills people have been tough to get service, but I'm hoping I'll get them going because 2007 I think is going to be the year when one of our cities or more is going to light up, because they want to cow us with either a pandemic or a nuke in a U.S. city or a dirty bomb to bring up martial law and to force us into civil detention facilities, even if it's just 2 weeks, to prove that it's okay. You need to have walkie-talkies, mirrors, which are good for signaling, Morse code books, signal fire training, all the kind of skills you need when you're a good Boy Scout. But if you don't have these skill sets, you're in a lot of trouble. CB radios, network, ham radio operators, all those kind of things. Clothes changes, extra shoes, boots. You might think this is stupid mentioning all these things, but I tell people they need to start thinking about it now, and they need to have a run-and-go pack in their car, and they should have maybe off-road maps and trailers, GPS and compass, flares, LED lights, sterno, all those kind of things. If they don't have these things, if they're in a big city, they have to have a plan to flee. And if at the first signs of things going on, you don't flee, you'll be trapped. And I talked to the people at FEMA and all these other people, and what they're planning on doing is setting a double perimeter around all large U.S. cities. The inner perimeter will be immediately around the circumferential highway around big cities like Los Angeles and Denver and elsewhere. And then about 30 miles out, they'll have an international force. That international force will be told to shoot to kill for any vehicles crossing or even across open areas of the desert or anywhere else. Okay? And they can hit you with non-lethal weapons, missiles, anything you can imagine, or ROVs, which is remote operational vehicles, both ones that fly and ones that you can't see coming at you because they're coming at you at 17,100 miles an hour. Unless you got real good vision. There's a book by Frank Stoltz. Half of it's a novel and the other half is preparedness protocols. And I got a 14-page document I kind of distilled from the U.S. Army War College. And I'm writing some bigger documents on preparedness for chemical, biological, and nuclear. But the government has done squat. I didn't do this for pay. I did this because I know our civilization is about to end. And it's all been hair trigger set up on purpose. Just like you set up a campfire and you finally throw the matches underneath the little chips of paper because you got kindling. What to do to prepare? Well, listen to the show. It's on RBN. You can go to 2 websites. Most of the above government technologies. I've got some new information, for example, last week from Harlan Gerard on mind control. And I do post classified information on my show. If anybody here is an NSA or other agent, hopefully you'll learn something. And you realize I'm your best buddy, and I want to save your ass. So take notice of this because I have the brains and the ability and the guts to try to save you and everybody else, whereas your government is going to treat you like a brown shirt, and you'll be the first one shot in the back of the head. So if you're listening to this in a DVD later or live, you better realize they're going to take you down because their plan is to transition to remote operational vehicles, cyborgs, weaponized animals like baboons that they have in a secret facility down near Galveston, Texas, where they have them set up so they have remote operating controls so they can put them on kill mode, and they have these nano armor on them so they can stop pretty well anything. An 80-pound baboon can pick up a 300-pound man and tear him literally in two. They can run at 35 miles an hour, and they can jump 15 to 20 feet in the air. But I don't think you're going to outrun these. And their plan is to create super soldiers. I had Mark Zeller on my show, and I was very familiar with the mesenchymal stem super soldier program. Their idea is to actually inject these. They did in Gulf War I, so that tells you how long ago they had this. Mark put on 6 inches in height and 100 pounds in weight in 6 months. His health is ruined because he also had experimental AIDS vaccine as well as Mycoplasma fermentans incognita proven and confirmed by Dr. Nicholson. You can also listen on Galaxy 5, Channel 17, and also on C-band satellite and shortwave worldwide. It's 12.180. 12.180, that's RBN Live. And my show is 2 to 4, Monday to Fridays, out of Austin, Texas, Republic Broadcasting. We also need to have people pick up micro broadcasting, so without a Federal Communications license, you can actually do micro broadcasting for as little as $5,000 with just an FM micro broadcasting in your city or your town. And if you get a string of these, we could cover a huge area because this is an information and it's a spiritual war. And we need some sugar daddies. If there's people that have some big bucks, believe me, I'm going to be elbow to elbow, if I'm not dead, to billionaires and millionaires whose money will be seized when they won't go along with the New World Disorder. So you better stick in your hand in your mattress because we're all going to be sent to these facilities. They already have us color-coded. They already have your database. And it doesn't matter how rich or poor. You could be George Soros, and if you do the wrong thing, they're going to yank your chain. So it doesn't matter how much money you have. You can be a billionaire, millionaire, movie star, whatever. Your history. And so we need some sugar daddies so we can get my show and the other shows in Republic Broadcasting Network on Sirius Satellite before they shut down freedom of speech completely. Because if we don't get this word out, it's not only the end of our civilization, it's the end of our planet. And I'm going to show you why. Because this is only talk number 1. So we're going to have a CD of this. Copy anything. I tell people copyright. Anything on my shows, any talks I have, you can purchase them and help us support us. You can copy it and distribute it. You have my permission to get it all over the damn place. And if you want to translate in any language, Swahili, Russian, Japanese, for God's sakes, do it. This is not an American problem. This is a global problem. And it goes beyond that because we are in a galactic war, and I'm going to talk about that too. We need to weed out the real patriots. There's a lot of gatekeepers. There's a lot of people who are, I call, immature. There's a lot of people who don't connect the dots. They also want to balkanize, and they need to shut up. They need to stop talking because we're all going to die here real soon if we don't stop this. I have two websites, NutriMedical.com and ClayandIron.com. And if you need a nutraceuticals needs consult, and I do them all over the world, you can call and schedule with Michelle, and that's at 888-212-8871. And that's talk number one. So that's just warming up. Now, if you want a little break, we'll give you a break while I get my next talk up. But we got lots of good stuff for you. This is just warming up. Yeah. I'm not sure what you can do. I'm not.
I think I have an idea here.
Okay, cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first. Why don't you adjust it first before I open up the next file?
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Here's what I think it is.
Make sure you had your bathroom break. The next one we're going to do, once you're ready, is technologies of the electronic cage, not age. The electronic cage. So just tell me when you're ready. Are we recording soon? Okay. Okay, everybody. This talk will be very succinct. Even if you've seen a lot about the electronic things that are going on and the mark and the national ID, you're going to see what I call a out-of-world view and then a zip right in that will give you a perspective that maybe you've not seen before. When you do, you're going to go, oh my God, you're going to get what I call the anal wink sign. Like, holy shit kind of sign. And the reason why I say that, and that four-letter word, is because when you see this, you realize how damn close we are to them actually doing it. And this is not a joke, people. This small number here, you people that want to know the truth are what I call the avatars. They're the people who are like the bubbles in the champagne when the hands are put on the champagne bottle in anticipation that the cork is about to be relieved. There are several bubbles that decide to go to the top, and you are those bubbles. The next group are what I call the change shapers. They're the people that the next wave, I call the vast majority of the sheeple, keep their eyes locked on the back end of the change shapers. Now, they're not necessarily innovators, but they're the people that whatever the change shapers do, everybody else follows the back end of that sheep, and they do it. Because most of the third wave of the population have levels of consciousness slightly higher than cockroaches or bacteria. They're not really aware, as Einstein said, dead at 18, buried at 69. I'm going to use that quote that you gave me earlier there, Mark. That was good. I thought, that's good. And I'm fully capable of trading my quotes with theirs, too. So I'm going to keep it in this mode, so hopefully you'll see it all. Technologies of the electronic cage is kind of, I try to use these one-liners. There's basically 4 abused technologies: mind control and influencing. And if you look at the book recently by Dr. Nick Begich, you've got to get this book. We have it on ClayandIron.com. That's CLAYAND iron.com. And you can also get it at... Oh, yeah, it's funny. I don't know why it shifted. I didn't do anything, actually. No, I just... Here, I hit that one again. See? Is that good?
Do you have dual monitors?
No.
You don't have double monitors?
No, just one.
I have a feeling it's the cursor. When you go off the edge of the cursor, that's probably what's moving the image.
You think so?
Take it all the way to the right. Just move the cursor all the way to the right. Yeah, that's what's doing it.
Oh, okay.
When you go off the edge...
Then it goes off. I better watch it then. Okay. The first is mind control and influencing, and that technology goes back to things like hypnotism in the 1940s, Nazi scientists, American scientists, people like Dr. Ewan Cameron. And I'll just tell you a little interesting anecdote. Dr. Cameron was supposed to have died after his research at the Montreal Neurological Institute mountain climbing in 1967. But I went to medical school in 1973 to 1977, and in 1975, my psychiatry professor teaching our class decided to have a special guest show up at our psychiatry teaching us. And fresh from the grave was Dr. Ewan Cameron. Isn't that interesting? Dr. Ewan Cameron, who died in 1967 mountain climbing, who was one of their favorite sons of mind control at the Montreal Neurological, it was wiping people's minds clean with these mind tanks where they literally, and he showed us all the slides. These are our reprogramming rooms where we completely wipe out the slate. And this is a big, tall guy. He's a big, strapping Scottish guy who must have been about 6'5", 6'6" at least. And you can imagine somebody like him with his huge hands on him, grabbing somebody and throwing him in one of these mind control chambers. And what they used to do basically is total isolation chambers with sound and light and everything until finally the person became a flaccid, empty vessel to be reprogrammed into whatever they wanted. And of course, these technologies were used supposedly during the Korean War and afterwards. They used Reichian reprogramming using sexual or using pain and suffering or threats. They used these same technologies with sound and light and so on in Gitmo and in Abu Ghraib in Iraq. The next evil technology is biometric tracking. And it's not just RFID chips that are passive that can be tracked at 120 centimeters from the reader. These are active chips that can be tracked from space. And the global chipset is tracked from the GPS system in Colorado Springs at Schriever Air Force Base Falcon, which is the most secure military facility on the planet. It's 3 higher levels of security than NORAD. Nanotechnologies. They want to alter your genetics. They're altering your food now. These GMO foods, I call them GNO Franken foods. And the new nanotech foods are 10 times even more dangerous than the nanotech genetically modified Franken foods. And then quantum computing. And you have to see how they all tie together. So there's a circle of the electronic cage. And you look at the first, you see the RFID chip at the top, biometric ID. And those biometric IDs, and I was told that this is the way the technology is going to work. They're going to have what's called an opening code to your database, which will be in this huge quantum array, but they'll have it dispersed in other databases. And a lot of the data will be carried on the card that can be read by a reader. The opening code, this is actually what I was told back in 1998, would have something like 3 sixes. First 6 would be a mesh barcode, which will identify where you are on the planet with 99 blocks on the Earth, 99 smaller blocks and 99 smaller ones will identify exactly where you reside. Second would be your age and year, month, day, and international dating system. And the third would be a number based on genetic subtype for your DNA haplotype for transplantation. So based on your numbers, they could know immediately if your organs could be taken and transplanted to someone else. Just like they do in all the prison systems in the Laodai camps in China, which is the most favored satanic nation. Next step is quantum computing. When you have these teraflop supercomputers like Big Blue here in California, and even more powerful ones that they won't talk about, like the gallium arsenide supercomputers made with chips that are kept supercooled at 200 degrees Kelvin below zero, that can make 100,000 times more calculations than a Cray 4 computer that has more computing power than all the computers in history. Then these can do array modeling of your brain, and they actually have a thing called a virtual cities program. I had employees that were in Denver that were working in the center of the virtual cities program is to make a cybernetic model of every living thing, of every person, of every building, of every road, of every city, of every vehicle in the earth in a cybernetic model, virtual world, in hyperspace, in their supercomputer quantum arrays. And I took care of the employees that worked on it. They have it to a tolerance of less than half a centimeter for every single building and every road on the planet. And so they're building this, so they have a cybernetic model of all things. So that's why they want to put an RFID chip in every bottle of water, even every pill. So every OxyContin you have, they will be able to follow from your tongue to the disposal sewage containment facility. Okay? That's the kind of control they're talking about. Predictive modeling. At the Stanford University Predictive Modeling Facility at the University of California, San Francisco, Stanford, they have a predictive modeling plan, and they keep putting more data in, and they do things to perturbate the model. Whether they set up a model like Singapore or Abu Ghraib or Iraq. And when they do things, they try to see how does the model respond. And let's do data gathering. So they gather the data on how the humans, the environment, or people respond, or even inside the military. And they build these model archetypes so they can then set up a modeling program that can then predict, based on large populations, what the population will do. And their biggest problem with the New World disorder, or should I call it the Old World recycle disorder, is they have dumbed the population down so far that they don't have a response that they can predictively know who's going to bolt when they finally get to a point. And people say, why are you alive, Deagle? You're talking about so much classified information. Most people would get shot in the back of the head in 5 minutes. Look, all my stuff's harassed and my bag's disappeared. Like I had to borrow a suit tonight because my bag's gone. It'll probably show up after the NSA scans every microfiber and I think I got microchips in it. They're fools. They're scared that their own people like George Soros and Bill Clinton and senior people in the military will bolt, and they don't know when. So they need us to shake the tree. And the second thing is they try to lie to each other and think that they can control this monster, that's us, once we, the ants, decide to finally get the wasps that are trying to rule over us like the movie Ants. And they're going to be very sorry because we're not exactly passive sheep. I'm a sheep with big muscles, sharp fangs, and long claws. And I'm totally fearless, and there's a lot of people behind me if they take me out and kill me tonight or some other day, and there's going to be a lot of dead them before they think that they're going to win. And they're actually gutless wonders, is what they are. And I know that my little daughter and my sons and my grandson, Ari Malachi, has got no future because in 10 years, every property reproducing in any country on earth will be totally under the control of global control. The human beings will only be reproduced in laboratories. That anybody with a polar body analysis indicating any genetic defects will not be permitted to live. That they will be genetically engineering us to die like light bulbs. They'll have total control and tracking of everyone, and they'll be able to even insert thoughts in your mind and even read your thoughts because they already have these technologies developed at places like the Menninger Institute, Topeka, Kansas, University of California, Los Angeles, UC Irvine, Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, the Tavistock Institute in England, and Russian and other facilities in Asia and Japan. So you have to understand these technologies are very advanced, and they know them already. And the next thing is biocoded signals. They can actually code specific biocoded signals, and combining it with technology like beamed microwaves, they can directly influence your body and control it, or insert mind's thoughts, use infrasound, tuned microwave frequencies, and they can influence or harm or kill you. And they can do these now. So this is not imaginary. So what's the transition? Well, the transition is this. National ID or passports. People say, well, that's not the mark of the beast. Well, let me tell you, it's a baby step away. And you'll see Mr. Sensenbrenner there kind of staring out with his fat, pudgy little face on that real ID card. And the next step is the implantable ID. And you can see the little claw around the side of the face of that young lady there that is getting her ID because it's a good national thing to do. And then finally you see the brain interface chip. Literally, George, 1 of 7. What they're going to do is they really do want to make a hive mind. And this is not imaginary, and they have the technologies to do it. You need to move the cursor back this way. Move to the right, and then it'll stop that, right? Good. Everybody see now? Okay. Now, if we look at this diagram here, you'll see the global terror event. They want a terror event in order to precipitate this. So they got this all modeled and planned. So they have a plan. I don't know when it'll be, but you can tell from their predictive modeling. They want the Iranian war, or at least a regional one, even if it's just the mining of the Strait of Hormuz so the oil stops coming from the Gulf. They already know that the Ayatollahs are really easy. They're hair-trigger Ayatollahs. All you have to do, and they've already said, Ayatollah Khomeini has already said that he will mine the Strait of Hormuz if you even threaten to attack him and his mullahs. They want to create an oil crisis. They like climate crisis. It's good for business. They like tsunamis once in a while, just to stir things up, especially when it's an area of mobile oil in the Asian area around Aceh. And they'd like maybe a little mini ice age over Switzerland and North Germany and Russia. It kind of stirs things up a little bit. So they need these things. They need also tell us lies that it's us driving in our SUVs with technology. By the way, we could have 300 mile per hour cars or cars that work on water engines or Tesla technology or methyl hydrates or helium-3, which is being mined right now on the moon. Helium-3 is for nuclear fusion engines, which we have that have already been around for years and decades, used for interstellar travel. They don't want you to know about all these things because it's part of their control matrix they want over you. They want citizens with an RFID chip in your passports. They want them literally in the vaccines. They developed an RFID chip to be put in vaccines at the University of Texas in Austin that is 1/20th the width of a human hair that can be analyzed and measured at 20 to 30 centimeters from the body. They want to be able to quarantine you. They want to have you color-coded. They want to make sure they know where you travel and how you travel. They want to control your education. They want to control a virtual model of what you know and how you know it from your purchases, your books, and everything. So they built a hyperspace model in this virtual world that they have built with this quantum computing, and they have it now, not future. So when you see programs like World of Warcraft, how many people have children and grandchildren to play World of Warcraft or other of these large role-play world warfare games? A lot of the tactics and so on are being uploaded by these advanced systems into supercomputer artificial intelligence arrays to actually use this against you with future ROVs, because their plan is what's called the 2010-2025 transition to remote operated vehicles with quantum supercomputers, snot-nosed 12-year-old super geniuses at playing video games. Okay, and of course they'll eventually get rid of them too. And also genetically engineered chimeric cyborgs. And they are doing this. They succeeded in cloning super soldiers in 1982 at the Moscow Institute for Biological Research with American and Russian scientists as well as others. They have been working on cloning since 1927 attempts by the Nazi Germans and have succeeded effectively with Russian women as the hosts for cloning super soldiers since 1982. It's not difficult. And their plan, and I was told this directly when they tried to recruit me to UCLA VA Wadsworth Hospital here in Santa Monica in 1977 when I was going to work on the World MS Tissue Repository under Dr. Wallace Tortolot. One project was to work as his PhD student doing research on multiple sclerosis because my first wife was dying of MS. And the other 4 projects, 3 of them were to actually take prisoners from West Orange and Irvine penitentiaries and wet wire their auditory and visual and other cortex as well as their rage and calming nuclei with platinum and palladium wires using a CT scan custom-made implanter that was hooked up to a CT scanner to make sure they got in the right nuclei so that you could remote wire them and control their brains. Well, they went on beyond that with Dr. Delgado's research in the 80s and succeeded very, very stoutly in being able to create scalar technologies that were very effective that could remotely control you without any need for implants. Finances, they want to control medicine. That's why when you see the national ID, the national medical system coming, banking, activities, medical, military, fines, info and control, library access, high definition TV. If you ever heard of the 25th frame phenomena, they want these things. You're using neurolinguistic programming and TV commercials and news, inserting through sound and light and other scalar technologies that are satellite-based, inserting ideas, paralyzing the mind, now spraying, by the way, sulfuryl fluoride, which fries the pineal gland, which is the hyperspace connection between the higher centers of your cortex and the higher dimensional planes of what you are as a spirit being. And they're actually trying to poison that thing called the silver cord. They know that if they can calcify the pineal gland, they can disconnect your spirit body with your physical body or interfere with it. And the reason is because you as a spirit understand and know things that you can not always explain in physical words, but you know that things aren't right. Just like an animal before a tsunami or an earthquake knows something's real damn wrong, and how come Deagle knows all this stuff? They want to insert thoughts in your mind and they want to program you. And they're doing it right now. And that's why when you see all these high definition TV, why is all this stuff out there? Well, it's all out there because they're programming you with everything they got in their bucket. International rights of the mind, and we need to have a rights of the mind. We're talking about rights, privacy, databases, and this table is a little busy, but you'll see I talk about a lot of things there. Can you see it now? We talk about rights, global rights, travel, finance, constitutional rights. We need to have an amendment to the U.S. Constitution that the right of the person's mind to not be interfered with excitotoxins like aspartame and MSG and other excitotoxins with nanotech. By the way, nanotech foods are direct invasion of your brain. These new vaccines, 275 of them, many of them are psychoneurotronic. They actually create plaque against certain nuclei in areas or receptors to stop you from being able to be addicted to alcohol, cocaine, cigarettes. But they also rewire the normal enkephalins and beta endorphins, etc., in your brain, and they change who you are. They also have specific vectors that can change your literal genetics, and it can actually change what you are. This is not imaginary. This is real. And then if we look at assault on consciousness, and you can see this, and you can see the little wedge there of consciousness. They want you to have no integrity of the person, no independence, no individual utility. In other words, if you don't have any utility, just like the Nazi German says, work to live, work to live, And they want to literally migrate us to transhumanity and a caste system where they genetically and cybernetically and nanotech rich will be the superclass with extended lifespans of millennia, and the rest of us will have Terminator genes to make us die quickly like light bulbs, and then take the small vacuum to get the ashes minutes later. And then, of course, their idea to transition to a hive mind, the idea of thought crime being a part of that. And here's the real nub of it. The Global Action Plan is to deal with a Bill of Rights of the Mind, U.S. Constitutional Amendment, and amendments that need to be adopted in other countries. And we need nations. Strong nations are not anathema to a rational collective that deals with world issues. The plan that they try to force us, their plan for a new world order, is a plan without nations and without walls, which is evil. The idea of having exchangeable currencies is reasonable, but the idea of a global proxy, fractional reserve electronic currency that's totally trackable and controlled so they can press Alt-Delete and you do not exist either in cyberspace or in reality is the reality of what's coming. They can take your license, they can take your money, they can take your possessions with eminent domain, and they can literally take your identity and who you are, and they want to wipe your mind clean like a slate. Privacy, integrity, barriers, and control are the 4 issues that need to be dealt with. And we need to have this amendment very quickly, and Dr. Nick Begich has been going to be on my show regularly, probably once a month, talking about this, because if we don't have a rights of the mind, the new battleground of the 21st century is not a biological weapons battleground or an ROV cyber technology battleground. It is a battleground of consciousness in the mind, because it has been said that I care not who controls the politics of a nation, but who makes the money. And I will make an addendum to that today. I care not who prints the money or even owns the printing presses, as long as I control consciousness. And that's the end of this talk, and then we'll have a little break and we'll get to talk number 3.
I figured out what the problem is.
Uh-huh.
You have this set up for multiple monitors, but you only have one monitor.
Right.
So, anyway.
Okay, do you want to modify it? Yeah, sure. See if you can fix it.
See if I can fix that.
He's got that look like I know monitors.
What part of the problem is he has?
Okay. You got okay. Go ahead.
Yes, there's something been in the back of my mind. In the recent news, you've heard about the conviction and the death of Kenneth Lay of Enron.
Oh yes, yeah. You mean they laid him down?
Well, it's always been a question in my mind as to whether that was a natural death.
Well, it depends on how natural it was. As they say, when you retire from the CIA, you're always double tapped.
Well,
I would imagine he's one of their minions who decided to minion the wrong way. And that's what's planned, by the way. And this is an announcement for all those who are in the NSA, Special Ops, Delta, the government, billionaires alike. You have to realize I'm your best buddy. I don't care how smart or how rich you are. I know what the hell's going on, and I'm trying to save your ass and the ass of your grandchildren for 1,000 generations. And if you don't listen to me today, and you don't remember what I'm saying now, or 1,000 or 10,000 years from now, you will face the same future that we are nearly facing that the people at Atlantis and Lemuria did with the exact same technology.
Recent news, you've heard about the conviction.
See if I can fix that.
He's got that look like I know modern.
What part of the problem is he has?
Okay. You got it, man? You got it. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, there's something been in the back of my mind. In the recent news, you've heard about the conviction and the death of Kenneth Lay of Enron.
Oh yes, yeah. You mean they laid him down?
Well, it's always been a question in my mind as to whether that was a natural death.
Well, it depends on how natural it was. As they say, you know, when you retire from the CIA, you're always double tapped.
Well,
I would imagine he's one of their minions who decided to minion the wrong way. And that's what's planned, by the way. And this is an announcement for all those who are in the NSA, Special Ops, Delta, the government, billionaires alike. You have to realize I'm your best buddy. I don't care how smart or how rich you are. I know what the hell's going on, and I'm trying to save your ass and the ass of your grandchildren for 1,000 generations. And if you don't listen to me today, and you don't remember what I'm saying now, or 1,000 or 10,000 years from now, you will face the same future that we are nearly facing that the people at Atlantis and Lemuria did with the exact same technologies 12,000 years ago. This is what we're facing. We are facing the end of civilization with scalar technologies, nuclear nanotechnologies, and even technologies that were given to us by civilizations elsewhere in this cosmos that have no business being here, like Morgellons. This is a silicon-based life form that did not originate in our part of the galaxy.
Dr. Deagle?
Yes.
If I could just ask, do you feel that Mr. Lay really requested to be, killed so that he could have his family fortune protected, through this legal ruling?
God knows what they did eventually. I wouldn't speculate, but all I can say is that a lot of the people at the top, and I don't care if they're movie stars or they're corporate presidents, whatever, and they've gone to the Grove or they've done evil, I want them to repent right now, because I could have been an Anakin Skywalker and become Darth Vader. I've been presented with the opportunity 3 times by the Pindar to become his understudy to the Corporation of Earth that runs everything. I could have been a very evil man, but I chose to go toward the light and not darkness. And I don't care if they've done darkness. I don't care if they've eaten children. I don't care if they've done the most horrendous things. They need to repent now, because it's the end of our civilization. We need to stop the balkanization based on religion, color, or anything else. They're doing this because they're ready to finish us off. In the next 1 to 2 years is the turning point in history. We are now being held in judgment, not on our Earth, but on off Earth. And we're dealing with a situation that's galactic in scope. We're not just dealing with a problem on this planet. Our world leaders are not telling what is really happening on this planet. They are lying, they are frightened, they are quivering jellyfish. And they need to stop, because our planet is being held in judgment. And we have 200 dead zones in our oceans. The Antarctica is not just melting because of the approach to Nibiru, and we have our ozone layer, but we are about to destroy all living things with depleted uranium. If we start a nuclear war, even a small one, and it's been calculated 350 megaton warheads will cause a nuclear winter, and there'll be no crops in most of the northern hemisphere for the next 3.5 years. We have 3 to 5 days of food. Within 30 days, half of the population of North America will be dead, without war, without another Katrina, without a nuclear bomb going off in Chicago, Denver, or San Diego, or Los Angeles. That's the reality. As cruel as it is, I'm a trauma doctor, I'm a burn doctor, I'm a realist, I'm an optimist, but optimism starts from the point of reality first, planning second, and response third, rather than being a victim. Yeah. Yeah, come on over here. Yeah. Yeah, come on over here so we can hear here. Yeah, your question. Your first name is?
Annette, I've got a quick question. If a person encountered a situation where they wanted to kill themselves instantly, what would be a substance that they could take?
Why would somebody want to kill themselves?
I don't know, but if they needed to, what could you do?
I'd much rather give somebody else the pleasure of killing me while I'm trying to kill them.
In that case, what could they use?
Well, there's all kinds of ways. I don't want to elaborate on that. Let's put it this way. They have these little bottles they keep on taking in the airline. You can't bring water bottles on, and they triacetone, triperoxide bombs. Total garbage. Those bombs you can only make at very low temperatures. You have to be basically almost freezing in order to actually create them. They're so unstable they literally burn your hands off. So when they try to say this, they realize that most people haven't passed first year chemistry and don't understand it. I know at least a half a dozen ways that could take a jet airliner down with something I can take on my person that nobody will ever detect by any molecular means. I know lots of ways of making directed energy and other types of weapons that I can manufacture by going to the local hardware store that could basically outtake somebody with a 50 caliber gun. So if they really want to pick a fight, they're going to pick it with the wrong guy. And my buddies are very, very brave. They will stand up. And this government better take notice that we are not going to put up with them selling out to globalists. They themselves are putting themselves and their own daughters. George Bush's daughters are in jeopardy. They're breathing depleted uranium. As we stand here breathing today, we're breathing 4 to 8 times the amount of nanoparticles of depleted uranium that they allow a uranium miner by the Environmental Protection Agency. We are about to turn the Earth into a dying cinder with our DNA being fried by depleted uranium, which looks like, as we approach the Christmas season, if you look under a scanning electron microscope, they look like little Christmas balls under the microscope. These are 1 nanoparticle will kill you. 1 nanoparticle. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Bill. This is such a happy presentation. I'm about ready to go to the other side.
Well, don't. See, there's always a positive side. That's why I bring people down, and you see in the other presentation, I bring them back up. But the thing is, I believe in this. You never show the children the edge of the bottomless abyss without making them realize that they have wings.
Excellent.
There's always a solution, but you have to ask the right questions. And what I really just get disturbed by is people who focus on 1 or 2 issues alone, whether they call themselves patriots or whatever, and not connecting all the dots or realizing that at the end of their matrix, there's another matrix. And there's many patriots, and I won't mention names, that say they don't like whistleblowers. They're a dime a dozen. We are the cannon fodder of the New World Order. We are the backbone that the journalists receive our information. And my message today is to all the whistleblowers, the people who are getting administrative renditions, whether they're doctors like me, attorneys, military personnel, special forces, government bureaucrats of this and every other country. You need to stand up and realize we want to stand with you because we know that you know what the hell's going on, whether you're that Canadian that works on the Aurora spacecraft will fly between here and our moon base that's mining helium-3 on that city, or our colony on Mars, or our space platforms, or our Star Wars-based technology and weapon systems that they keep lying about to the Canadians and other people, saying someday we'll weaponize space. They want the Canadians to know, so if they ever shoot anything down that's radioactive, you won't complain when most of Ontario becomes radioactive. That's why they want to make sure the Canadians are on board, because it's already up there and has been for decades.
Question then about who's behind all this. Is it Michael Tessarian and his, if you're familiar with his alien Anunnaki?
I'm going to get into that stuff.
Okay.
That's part of my next talks. That's why I want you to understand that we're dealing with not just a human war, we're dealing with a war of as it says in the Bible, which has some truth. We are at war not with flesh and blood, with both principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. We're dealing with transdimensional and what I call IFE and life, and I'll explain that later in one of my slides. We're dealing with beings that are far beyond the range of the mundane existence of normal human beings, that are in higher dimensional planes and galactic areas and in worlds far beyond ours. And they have transferred technologies and made treaties with our governments and traded in human flesh to the great disgrace of our governments for decades. And this evil has to stop now. And we had the Red Cross and Dime Corporation had, for example, the equivalent of 4 stadiums of women and children that disappeared in Eastern Europe alone just in the year 2005, and the Red Cross in Europe actually gave them notice. Now, where do you think they disappeared? They didn't just disappear to brothels and body houses in Israel and Saudi Arabia, which are the two primary places, or in facilities off of Africa, and pleasure palaces that are in these large cruise ships. No, they disappeared in underground laboratories where there's genetic experiments done on them and horrendous things. They disappeared in off-world facilities, and they disappeared in space platforms orbiting around the Earth. They disappeared in other facilities where there's unspeakable things that I won't mention to you, otherwise I'll lose it, that are happening to these human beings because our gutless governments have made treaties with these beings. And you need to know that that's reality. It's not imaginary. That's where they've got a lot of this technology.
During the last few days, there was a rather frightening story about a Russian scientist dying of uranium poisoning.
Yeah, it was actually polonium-210.
And
that
plus
was Litvinenko.
Others have died, and they're talking about they have to do the autopsy in spacesuits. It does seem to go along with what you're saying. I just wanted to get your take on that.
Well, what I've seen so far, and I've heard some theories, one of the theories that seems to hold more water, and again, I don't know all the details, is that it was actually not done by the Russians, but it was done by the British, because what the British have been trying to do is stage a takeover of Russia, because what happened is last year, Mr. Putin said, I'll be a nice boy to you bankers in London and the Rothschilds, and I'll make sure all of our nice Russian oil money goes directly in your nice Rothschild banks. Until finally, and you see now Putin, although he may be a short guy, he's a tough guy. And he's also a Russian.
I believe he's stepping down for somebody else, is he not?
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
And besides, a lot of times these guys are more powerful when they're no longer in the front line. They're behind the scenes being the puppeteers. And Vladimir Putin was probably actually set up. They probably killed this guy, Litvinenko, the British did, because they've been trying to actually stage a coup in Russia, just like they had tried to carry orange revolutions off in other countries over there, because they have to neutralize the Russians, because the Russians have advanced scalar weapons. They have the advanced Topol-M missile. They have the most advanced anti-aircraft missiles and systems in the world. They have the most advanced biological weapon systems in the world that were developed in Russia. And they have scalar technologies decades beyond America, although America's built very big systems like the HARP system, the one off in the Pacific in Deagle, Garcia, and elsewhere. These systems are very advanced, but the Russians have been decades and decades ahead. That's why rather than using thermal standards for their radiation effects, even 50 years ago, the Russians had radiation levels that were 10,000 times lower because they could see non-thermal cellular effects with scalar signals as long as 70 years ago. So the Russians are very aware of the effects of scalar technology on biological systems in human cells, which is why they don't allow the kinds of levels of radiation. We have 100,000 times as much harmonic radiation in our cities, like in this city in Los Angeles, than there was 10 years ago. And the most deadly poison on Earth is not heavy metals or even depleted uranium. It's scalar harmonic energies coming off everything from your cell phones to your grids. And all they need to do is pump a signal along that has scalar signals that's biocoded to specific centers in your brain to insert ideas, to kill, to make you confused, or to make you fall asleep. And they can make entire populations do whatever they want or kill you. And they can do that today. Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you, how did you acquire all this information? It's an incredible amount. I think you said you had a photographic memory.
Fairly close.
And you seem to remember everything you've been told. Is that
pretty close?
Yeah, that's really remarkable.
It's a gift that I was given, I think, for this moment. And you'll see that I've been called not only as a doctor and a scientist, but I'm called here, when you see my other talks, I'm called to speak as a prophet. And I'm talking about in the words of the prophets of the ancient ages, like the last great prophet, Yeshua HaMashiach, who is the prophet who spoke about the age of Pisces, who actually presented to us choices. And we're at the same point in time in history now where we're presented choices. And this choice, though, in this time is greater than even the time of Atlantis and Lemuria, because the level of technologies we have and the transfer of technologies from advanced cultures in different parts of our cosmos has put us in the edge of a galactic battle that's so serious that it may literally kill everything on our planet forever.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Have you heard of Ray Kurzweil's new book, The Singularity?
Yes, we're in fact approaching the singularity is actually the combination of nanotechnologies and artificial intelligence and all these other things, but it's also the transfer of technologies from advanced cultures from other parts. Part of this is very evil and violates cosmic law. And the other thing is we're approaching a thing called the nexus, which is a precision of the equinox, as I mentioned earlier. As our galaxy rotates through the galactic plane, we're actually approaching a protein energy ion field that actually, this proton ion field actually is a rent in the space-time continuum that occurred with an ancient war. And so we're actually approaching this same point in space-time, and we're asked the same questions, which is exactly why the Mayans talked about a circular calendar. Because they said if you knew the past, the ancient past, you could also predict the future. Because in my view, our universe, when you look forward, you're looking into the ancient past.
Dr. Deagle, if we're going to have all these cataclysms coming up, where a tremendous devastation is going to take place, most of the people in the world are going to die, why is the New World Order going through the meticulous process of creating the North American Union, the Central American Union, South American Union, the Asian Union, the African Union, European Union? Why? That's not going to be necessary. Why are they doing this?
They're doing it for several reasons. You'll notice that if you look at the treaties for the seas, they're moving in inland waterways in most of the major continents. Okay. For example, the Three Gorges Dam in China, the whole construction project was taken over by the Carlyle Group under orders of the Queen and the Jesuits. And a year and a half ago, they actually took over all of the construction of the largest construction company on Earth, which is in China. 80% of the concrete on Earth is now used in building these dragon cities along the Chinese coast. Their whole idea is that they're building central transportation routes because they know the coastal areas are going to hit by super tsunamis. They know that there are going to be global earth changes where the continents are going to completely change. Good parts of California will disappear and there'll be a chain of islands. They know that the tsunami will hit the west coast of America with the passage of Nibiru, and this tsunami will be at Mach 1, traveling at 740 miles an hour all the way to the west slope of the Rockies. They know the east coast is going to be hit with the Cumbra Viejo super tsunami that will be 300 meters high, traveling at 540 miles an hour. And this is not speculation. If you have a major geotectonic event, such as the movement of a hypergravitational object, whether it's 5, 10, or 500 years from now, it will result in it. The same way as the blowing up of the super caldera in Wyoming will result in a global winter that will last from 3 to 5 years minimum. And the extinction of most of the species on Earth except for those who have water and food and other ways of survival. So we're facing a cataclysm, but they're planning on having remnants of populations survive in the center of continents because they figure they can have that plus their underground cities. There's over 1,500 cities. The city, for example, between Conifer and I-70 can house almost 18,000 people underground for a minimum of 7 years plus, with nuclear reactors, hydroponics, hospitals, and even shopping. They're quite capable of these cities. The ones in Russia, they built multiple cities that are fairly large with manufacturing facilities, etc. They can house 250,000 people in each city under the central Ural Mountains. So they're all prepared. They have the same thing in Korea and China and elsewhere for the coming global cataclysms. And they don't want to tell the populations because 80% of the population of Earth lives within 100 miles of the coast, which I think is a criminal activity on the parts of the global governments not warning people that these events are coming. Superstorms, tornadoes like the one that hit London today, all of these are an example of the gutless activity of our world leaders who should not be ruling. And the reason is because they will not speak the truth. And that goes with my medical profession, who are a strong leg of the New World Disorder with their medical procedures, their chips, their vaccines. They will be the Dr. Mengelas of the Fourth Reich.
The hierarchies of power within the New World Order, we have the Jesuits, the Rothschilds, the British royal families, some of the royal families of Europe.
Right.
But you've hinted that there are some ETs or interdimensional beings that direct these people or control these people?
I'll explain it. Down through all civilizations in history, all civilizations, where you call them the term Masons or you call them these sacred high priests, whether it's ancient Lemuria, Atlantis, or other civilizations from Samaria, Egypt, all of these ancient civilizations did a process which is similar to mind controlling that they used at Guantanamo Bay and Gitmo and elsewhere. They created what's called a split in the personality and altars. They're using Reichian programming that's used to actually create a new alter or a sub-personality that can be inhabited by an astral entity. Human beings can only arise to the 180th degree within Mason. The word human actually means serpent man, meaning indwelt by an astral entity. All medical schools, all higher university educational institutions in all countries done through all history have been inhabited by these beings because it's part of the process of getting higher levels within any secret fraternity or order, whether you're a lawyer, a judge, or a politician, or a corporate president. For example, when people make the mistake saying they see beings shapeshift, they're actually just seeing with their spirit eyes, which they do have, they're seeing the hyperdimensional entities, which may be reptilian in shape, but they're actually not looking at a shape-shifting, which violates the laws of thermodynamics because it explodes with heat. They're actually seeing that those families have had lineal passage of sex and blood sacrifices down through their families through history, like Hillary Clinton, whose family has been one of the leading Luciferian evil families in American history, the Ruddams. That's why they're so intimately tied with this. So if you look at all these families down through history, what you're looking at is you're looking at a human flesh husk that is surrounding a bioplasmatic astral entity which is guiding that just like a controlled object. So the higher levels of Masonry above the 180th degree are all non-human. So the 360th degree. So if you understand that that has been the nature of all human history, not just some of it, then you start to get a grasp on how we have been very, very Earth-centric and not realizing we're in not only a galaxy and a cosmos, but we're dealing with many dimensions beyond the third and fourth. And we're dealing with a very vast universe. And we're dealing with physics and laws that the level of ignorance of our populations has been purposeful, because if you don't know what you are, as I always say, if we knew what we were, we would not do what we do. The problem comes that we do not know what we are, therefore they're in control. And they hide the very nature of reality, that we are the masters of our fate, because we are the 1,000 points of light, not them. We are made in the image of the Most High God. We are literally the rulers of this universe, but we have had our identity hidden. We have been in a state of unconsciousness, and we've had it taken away by religion, who have always substituted a formula for a pathway. And there is, as Yeshua HaMashiach said, that your religion, your traditions nullify the way. Which is why the first 3 centuries, the Greek Orthodox, who understood correctly, knew that Jesus was not God. He was becoming fused to become a God. And that he was on the pathway, so what he was teaching, and he was called the teacher of the way. He was not called the Christ. All of these things were created later by the Luciferian Catholic Church that wanted to turn into a Babylonian myth, including the virgin birth, so that they could manipulate the population and control them so they wouldn't realize that Jesus himself said, when I return you shall do even greater things, for you shall be exactly as I am, not different. That's the real gospel. Okay? 3-minute break and then it's part 3. How's that?